audiobook by Fate's Reader. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel for more epic series. Drop your recommended novel in comments below. We love to know what you want to hear next. Supreme Magus. Chapter 6, A New Beginning. He is alive. I did it. I managed to save your boy's life. Please, remember that means words that Derek is not capable of understanding. After the midwife triumphantly said those words, the room exploded in cheers and tears of joy. The people in the room were hugging each other and the mother in turns. Meanwhile, Derek lied limp in the midwife's arms, looking left and right, trying to determine how bad was his current situation. Well, what do we have here? The bedridden woman is clearly this body's mother. She definitely needs a bath. After delivery, the sheets were stained with blood, urine, and feces. The crying, rough-looking man should be the father. I wonder if he's crying for my sake or just because he was afraid of losing his wife. I bet the second one. Then I have a bigger brother and a sister. This is bad. Suddenly another woman entered the bedroom, bringing with her a little boy and a girl that raced to the bedridden woman. Oh, damn it. This is even worse than I thought. So far I have only two possible choices. Option 1. Grow into this large family, fighting every day for the few available resources. Malnourishment is most definitely a given. Then, when I'm old enough, started to work with father and brothers, getting married, having children, etc. Option 2, wait until I'm tall enough to grab sharp objects, put me out of my misery, and take another spin hoping for a better outcome. I think I'll go with option number 2. Meanwhile, the room had become silent. The midwife had already finished cleaning the newborn, wrapped him up in a clean cloth. During all this time, Derek neither moved or cried. Nana, what's wrong with the baby? Why is he not crying? It never happened before. The mother was worried, and ignoring the pain was trying to get up. Shush, child, and don't you dare to move. I still have to heal you. The midwife tone did not leave space for reply. I delivered dozens of children. A silent one is rare, but nothing special. Do you want to see how strong he is? There you go. She unwrapped him from the cloth, and while holding him gently, gave a little spanking to force him to cry. Derek grunted a little, while staring at her in dismay. Want to play rough? Old hag, he thought. Fine, you just trigger my trap card. Twin Flood, activate. And out of the blue, he relieved both his bowels and bladder. The backdoor attackers splattered all over her feet, while the front door flood struck her on the face and chest. Derek started giggling loudly. Well, this wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but as you can hear for yourself, this little imp is breathing just fine. The midwife handed the baby to another woman to clean him. Derek kept giggling, proud of his work. After washing her face with warm water and a cloth, the old hag moved her left index finger, drawing a circle in the air, striking it through in the middle from right to left. Then she pronounced a single word. Ekadu. A black energy manifested on her fingertip. She proceeded to point it over her wet dress and then over her shoes. The smell of feces and urine suddenly disappeared, and so did their source. With his mouth agape in shock, Derek watched as his poop would dry and crumble, turning into dust. It was akin to watching one of those fast-forwarded videos where in 1 minute you could see a seed becoming a flower. Heisenberg's beard. She is not just an old midwife. She is a real magician in the flash. I have never been so happy in my whole 3 lives of being so dead wrong. Derek was ecstatic, and not only because that world had magic, but also because as soon as he heard the word Ekadu, he had felt something clicking inside of him. Like if something deep inside of him had started taking root and suddenly had become ingrained in the very fabric of his new reality. He started repeating obsessively the magic word in his mind and trying to engrave in his memory every detail of the circular finger movement. Now that I'm clean, let me stop that bleeding, dear. The healer approached the mother and placed her hands above her nether regions. Is it time for another magic? Show me, please. Derek begged in his mind. Nana first spreaded his fingers wide, then started to move both arms in a circular motion, first up over her head, then open her arms as much as she could before joining her hands, palm against backhand, at her navel's height. Vinayar Lockhat. Derek, all wrapped up, tried to mimic all her movements, step after step, memorizing every single detail he could grasp, no matter how small. A sphere of light enveloped Derek's mother lower body, and she quickly recovered her complexion. The pale skin reverted to a healthy pink, while all the traces of pain and fatigue disappeared from her face. Once again, something clicked inside him. After the dark magic, he could clearly feel that simply by hearing the power word, a connection had been established between him and light magic. Derek could not stop grinning. If I have enough magical talent, it would mean there is actually a third hidden option. He thought, I can become a magician and live free for the first time in my life. No sacles, no responsibilities. But it's better not get over-enthusiast. With my luck, I could just have a poor talent, or... His reasoning was abruptly interrupted. The woman that had held him until that moment was handing him to his mother. Asterisk. Nana, are you sure he is all right? He is yet to cry and giggle, or not he is too quiet. With all that happened, I am really afraid that something is wrong with him. Asterisk. After those words, the noisy room turned gloomy. Afraid that he was somewhat responsible and quite eager to explore option number 3, Derek did his best baby impression, giggling, smiling, and doing raspberry sounds. Nana felt her professional pride hurt by such allegations, but it wasn't her first time with an anxious mother. She knew Alina since she was still a child and had delivered all her babies. Nana could not deny that this delivery had been one of the most difficult of her career. The labor had lasted hours, and she had been forced to cast healing spells multiple times to stop the bleeding. When she finally could see the baby's head, she knew something was wrong. Alina was fighting with all her strength, but the baby was limp. So, she had rushed and used her hands to pull out the baby as fast as possible, only to discover that he was being strangled by his own umbilical cord. After cutting and removing it, she had tried all her best spells, but to no avail. For a whole terrible minute, Nana had believed the child was lost. But then the healing light had finally activated, forcing the baby to puke, clearing his airway. Then, and only then, Nana started affording the luxury of relaxing. Healing magic was no miracle. It could enhance the life force of the patient, making easier to recover from an illness or healing from an injury, but it could not create life. Nana was sensitive, so she understood that Alina didn't need a lesson about magic. Just be reassured about her child's health. Asterisk, worry not, my child. I can prove it to you that all is well. Asterisk, with a warm smile, she caressed Alina's cheek and took Derek from her arms, removing the cloth like she was revealing a treasure. Nana carefully adjusted Derek in the crook of her left arm. Then she circled her open right hand all around him and said, Venire radu. A small wisp of light came out of her palm, dancing around the baby before penetrating his chest. The light spreaded from head to toe, making him emit a dim light. Asterisk, see? If there was even a scratch on his body, my injury detecting spell would leave that area bleak. Your little son is fine. Asterisk, the energy flowing through his body was making Derek feel empowered. In his old life, he had felt like that only few times. When he got his degrees, when he finally abandoned his parents' home, when he beat up the bullies. But all those times it had been a fleeting emotion, lasting few seconds at best. Now it was different. It wasn't just adrenaline. Real magic, real power was coursing through every fiber of his being, making him feel invincible. So, when the spell started fading off, he could not accept that. No, come back to me. Give me my power back. Derek screamed inwardly. He focused on the last strands of energy, willing for them to stay. He could not cast the spell on his own, but he could still feel the lingering power and started feeding it with his own. Derek's light stopped dimming and instead grew stronger and stronger. Nana was dumbfounded. She had never seen anything like that before. That was not how the spell was supposed to work. Derek wanted it to last forever, but a second later, he fell asleep due to mana exhaustion, and the light disappeared quickly. Nana wrapped up the baby again and returned him to his mother's embrace. Nana, what was that? Alina asked, full of wonder. The old healer had no idea how to answer. Many possibilities popped up in her head, and all of them would require long explanations that would needlessly make Alina worry and maybe even forcing Nana to repeat the spell. It had been a long day, and she had no intention on prolonging it even a second more than necessary. So she borrowed a line for her childhood's favorite fairy tale. Supreme Magus. Chapter 7, A Baby's Day. Derek's first days as a baby were peaceful, but far from boring. He had no responsibilities. All he had to do was eat, sleep, poop, and the occasional baby noise or finger-grabbing routine. That left him with all the time he needed to think about his future. On Earth, it was no mystery that kids had a greater potential for learning than adults, and since his family seemed human, or at least human-like, he could hope for that to be true also in this dimension. From what he could see, his body was no different from a baby from planet Earth. He could hear his heartbeat, his chest inflating and deflating while breathing. Even the reproductive apparatus was the same. The same could be said for his new family. If it wasn't for the existence of magic, he would have simply thought to have traveled through time, but things clearly weren't that simple. Derek quickly dismissed all the "what race am I now" hypothesis as overthinking. One of the advantages of being a baby was that ignorance was perfectly fine. When the time came, someone would teach him. He determined that he had two priorities. Number one, learn their language. All babies are supposed to learn their native language, and he had only so much time before being considered a retard, so he could not slack off. Number two, he had somehow to figure out magic, or at least its foundations. And that also had a deadline, since his learning potential was at its peak only until his brain stopped growing. After that, he would not be different from anyone else with the same talent and disposition for magic. So, he set magic as his first priority. Being considered a slow learner was much better than being weak for life and forced to take another spin at reincarnation. Derek spent his first day in the new world in bed, together with his mother, while his father would sleep and rest in the boys' room. Whenever someone talked to him, he paid close attention, trying to figure out common words or patterns. The rest of the time he was not eating or the cloth diaper being changed. He would try to cast one of the three spells he knew: Ekadu, Vinayar Lockhat, and Vinayar Rad 2. Every attempt was a failure. He could not feel even an iota of power inside himself. Comparing what he saw from what he knew from Earth's dungeons and looting, those spells had clearly a verbal and somatic component. But that couldn't be all, or at least he hoped so. Otherwise, until he was able to talk, all his efforts would have been wasted. Failure after failure, his anxiety grew stronger. Fear of the unknown and of tomorrow started to build up. Also, getting used to poop and wet himself wasn't a pleasant feeling either. Thankfully, his mother showered him up with nothing but love and affection, making his day not a total loss. Despite his bias about mothers due to his previous life, Alina managed to make him feel loved and protected. That wasn't half bad at all. The final outcome of his first day was zero progress in magic, no progress with language. But his mother seemed to be a good parent, and he finally learned his new name, Lith. The second day turned his world upside down. Alina, showing the strength of a wild ox, decided she was sick of resting and got up to help doing the daily chores. Lith had the opportunity to see her full figure. Despite giving birth the previous day, she was a good-looking woman in her early 20s. She was definitely well endowed in all the right places, with a fit body honed through hard work. Her shoulder blades' long hair was of a beautiful light brown color, with shades of red all over it. Just the light of the candle made it look like there were flames dancing within. Seeing Mother with her hair down in a sunny day must be quite a sight to behold. Derek thought. Maybe it was because Lith was still a baby, maybe because of the mother-son bonding, but Lith felt deeply proud of her. He also discovered that she seemed to not use bra or underpants. Once finished dressing, she wrapped up Lith, making it impossible for him to move. Then Alina placed him into her sash, using it like a baby cradle so that she could easily hold him with only one arm with minimum exertion. She walked out the small bedroom and found her older daughter, Eliza, messing with the fireplace. "What in the great mother's name do you think you're doing, Lily? The sun is not even out. You should be sleeping. You know you're not allowed to mess with fire," she said with a hiss, trying to not wake up the house. "I'm sorry, Mom, I just wanted to make you all a surprise. Let you wake up in an already warm house and breakfast ready. Eliza's face showed only sincere concern. Asterisk, there's no need to worry, silly bee. Your mommy is a pro with kids. Asterisk, Alina said while ruffling her hair. Eliza, together with her twin brother, was the eldest child. She was 8 years old, and her blonde hair with shades of black was the reason for her moniker. Alina shooed her away from the fireplace, and with a flick of a finger lighted the fire. In Firo, thanks heavens, Lith rejoiced. Once again, I had that weird feeling when discovering a new type of magic. This proves I wasn't just imagining stuff. Alina sent Lily opening the window's shutters to let the dawn light in while she prepared breakfast. Alina took several vegetables out of a cabinet and proceeded chopping them with a knife. Some had a familiar look to Lith, like some semi-potatoes and odd color carrots. The others were all a mystery. The idea of having such breakfast made Lith almost cry. In his past life, he never liked vegetables. They were all bland tasting. No matter how much of them he ate, within half an hour he would be hungry again. Alina shoved everything inside a small copper cauldron and with the help of a hook hanged it on a metal bar over the fire. Then with a finger snap, she conjured water out of nowhere, filling the cauldron. Both Lith and Eliza were ecstatic, even though for completely different reasons. For Lith, it meant hope. Spells could be casted without words or precise hands movements, and that showed him that there was a real chance for him to practice magic while still being baby. For Eliza was a reason for pride. Magic was common, but every time Alina casted a silent spell, it was like watching a real magician at work. Asterisk, you are so amazing, Mom. Asterisk, Eliza's eyes were full of admiration. Asterisk, will I ever be as good as you with magic? Asterisk, asterisk, of course you will, silly bee. Asterisk, Alina replied with a kind smile, while inwardly adding, after 10+ years of chores every single day. After a while, everyone woke up to have breakfast together. The family consisted of Raz, father, Alina, 2 daughters, Eliza and Tista, and 2 sons, Orpal and Trine. Lith could then establish with depressing certainty that there was no such a thing as an indoor bathroom. From what he could see, the house consisted of a big room, used as dining room, kitchen, and pantry with 3 doors that lead to the various bedrooms, and nothing else. The breakfast was relatively quiet, so he had no problems learning the word for water magic when his father filled some jugs. Joran, after everyone left for their daily routine, Alina moved along with Lith to a rocking chair. During the morning, he had the pleasure to discover that in the new world, the daily chores like washing the dishes or cleaning the floors were all performed using magic. From her rocking chair, Alina would simply twirl her index and medium finger while reciting Breza to generate up to 3 small whirlwinds that she would move all around the house to collect and get rid of the dust. Whenever someone would dirty the floor with earth or mud, a flick of the wrist and a magna would send them back through the same door they were brought in. Lith was delighted discovering how common the use of magic was. Everyone in the family, even the younger ones, would use magic to make their life easier. When bedtime arrived, Lith was dying to try some magic. He had waited so long for his hands and feet to be finally free. Alina fell asleep almost instantly, yet Lith was impatient enough to have the impression of having waited for hours. After a full day of thinking, he had decided to try only air magic first until he was confident enough in his magic control abilities. Fire was just too dangerous for a novice, while water and light would easily wake up his mother. He could not spot any dirt to control in the dim light of the room, and was too afraid to mess up with darkness magic until he got a better understanding of it. So, he twirled his little arm and said, Nothing happened. Lith tried and failed countless times before giving up. He did not know how long his baby body would have lasted until falling asleep, so he stopped despairing and started thinking. Magic was common. Whenever he heard for the first time an elemental magic word, something inside him had clicked, like creating a connection with the elemental energy. Those were all good news, but he still couldn't make head or tails why he was always failing. He never expected succeeding at the first try, but he had thought that something would have manifested. A random, tiny gust of wind, a magic spark, anything would do. So, he started thinking back to when the healer had filled him with power. That feeling was not new to him, but he never experienced it so intense. Lith searched his memory until he found the answer. It was the same sensation that he had when he started practicing Aikido while learning the basic breathing technique. Well, I have nothing to lose. Let's give it a try. Supreme Magus. Chapter 8, Unrelenting Practice. In the following weeks, Lith's days consisted of a strict routine. During the day, when he was all wrapped up, he would only focus on practicing the breathing technique and learning as much as he could about his family and their language. At night, he would practice magic until exhaustion made him fall asleep. Then as soon as he woke up, he would start again until Alina would get up for the day. More than once he tried taking a break, but it would never last long. Living as a baby was not easy. On the contrary, it was very stressful. He could not speak, even the words he had already understood to not scare his family. He could not move. He could do nothing but watch, sleep, eat, and relieve his bowels. He was not used to be so helpless and dependent on someone else for every little thing. Too much free time would bring him to the verge of insanity. So, he would practice and practice, trying to adjust to his new reality without overthinking about how absurd and irrational was his situation. As Lith's powers increased, so did his control, and after a few weeks he felt confident enough to try earth magic and water magic. He would always be careful, never conjuring more than a few droplets of water or manipulating a handful of dirt. He discovered that it was possible to make the elements float in midair, changing their shape and size by continuously spending mana. After that, he shifted his night training on focus and control rather than power. His mana was very limited, and he much preferred doing few elaborate tricks perfectly rather than a lot of stuff at the risk of blowing his cover. No matter how common magic was, Lith doubted that a baby practicing it would be any less than shocking or even terrifying. Lith was afraid of being abandoned by his family, or even worse, killed. He was once again scared of death, since now he had too much to lose. What were the odds to find another world where magic existed, to be born as a baby in a loving family? Zero, none, nada, squat. He had to play his cards well, and play them as close to the vest as possible. Before revealing even a hint of his talent, he needed to know what the standards of that world were. How much talent was considered good? How much divided being considered a genius from being labeled as a monster? His mind was constantly filled with worries, and only training would alleviate his anxiety. After 3 months, he had become good enough at silent magic to try fire magic on the fireplace. The fire was already lit, and when everyone was busy talking and eating during breakfast, he tried making the flames dance at will. It ended up in failure, since the flames were too strong and the distance too big for his mana to have any effect. Yet he kept trying, since he could still sense the flow of magic going from himself to the fireplace, hence making it a good training to expand his mana sense and range. The only downside of all that training was that Lith would get hungry faster. Luckily, he was not Alina's first glutton, and she had no shortage of milk. Another month passed, and Alina started weaning him. This event was meaningful for 2 reasons. The first was Lith noticing that food wasn't abundant in his household. So even if he still had not a rich vocabulary, he could still read his parents' worried expressions every time he needed to be fed. Despite still being a cold-hearted, cynical misanthrope at his core, Lith could not help but feel guilty about it. They loved him like a child, while he would consider them nothing more than hosts, like a parasite. The only exceptions were Alina and Eliza, his big sister, the only one that along with his mother would take care of him. With their constant love, affection, and care had managed to crack his emotional defensive wall. The more time he spent with them, the more he would consider them part of his real family, not just people that he was leading by the nose. So, he started limiting his training to not exceed the amount of food they could afford. Even that required quite a few tries to find the right amount, since too little would cause even more worry than too much. The second reason were world-changing discoveries. Being forced to stop training magic as much as possible, Lith now had free time that he used to dedicate that time by practicing the breathing technique that he christened accumulation. That way, his inner energy that he had long dubbed as mana core grew faster to the point of hitting a bottleneck. Apparently, his body wasn't big or strong enough, or both, to hold an indefinite amount of mana. Lith never noticed before, because his baby body was rapidly growing, and he had only so much time to expand the mana core. So without realizing it, his body and mana core had developed together. But now the balance had been broken, and practicing accumulation would make every fiber of his body ache, so he was forced to stop. Luckily, he was still well fed and developing fast, so despite not being able doing any physical exercise, the bottlenecks would not last long. The second discovery was the result of him being forced not to practice magic or use accumulation. While studying his bottleneck status, he found out that it was possible to modify the breathing technique by removing the breath holding step. That way, the world energy would just flow in and out his body, energizing him like a good night's sleep. Lith named this new technique invigoration. After several tries, he discovered that the world's mana could allow him to stay awake for several days, but not indefinitely. Each time he would use invigoration, the energizing effect would last less and less, and only sleeping would reset its effectiveness. But the most important discovery, as almost always happens, was made by chance. After adjusting his food intake, Lith's greatest enemy had become the hunger. Not the slight appetite that can be fixed by a candy bar or the hankering after a busy morning. It was the kind of hunger that never goes away, always lurking even right after a meal. Even though Lith was not starving, it was something that he had never experienced. Even among all the misfortunes of his first life, food had never been an issue. He had always been able to eat to his heart content, even allowing himself to be picky about food. But now he was so hungry that he ate until the last bite, and if his body had allowed him to, he would not hesitate licking the plate clean. In the good days, when the portions were larger, it was like white noise, annoying but easily ignored. But during the bad days, either because the rations were smaller or because he had lost himself in the practice of magic consuming too much mana, it would become a thorn in his head. He would be so hungry to have a headache all day long, often feeling lightheaded and incapable of focusing. Food would be the only thing he would think or dream about. Of course, he was not the only hungry one in the family. Aside from Alina, only his siblings Orpal and Eliza would be tasked to feed him. And while Eliza had a big heart and strived to be like her mother, Orpal was angrier and hungrier by the day. He would often daydream about the days when he and his twin were the only children in the house. Now, not only he had to fight each day for his parents' attention, but also for the food, clothes, and so on. Once he had a room only for himself, then he had to share it with Tryon. It was just a matter of time before Lith would come to take away what little personal space he still had. Orpal could not understand why a family as poor as his own would keep making kids. It was winter, so there was not much work to do. Hence, there weren't many occasions to restock their food supplies, and they had to last until spring. It was the toughest time of the year for all the farmers' families, since the food was meant not only for men, but also for the animals. Orpal was sick of seeing Lith gobbling all the food, to the point of dubbing him Leech. So, whenever it was his turn to feed the little vermin, he would take some spoonful for himself. But Lith was not easily bullied. As soon as he noticed the spoon was not aimed to him, he would start to cry madly, and Alina would run to his side, foiling Orpal's plan. Lith never cried, unless he needed to be fed or changed, and that made their parents both really happy and paranoid about him. Since he would never cry wolf, they took every wail very seriously. That day was a really bad day for Lith, starving because of his growth spurt, and was Orpal's turn to take care of him. Both their parents were out. One of the cows seemed to suffer from frostbite. So Orpal took the plate full of creamy soup for the baby and gulped down a full spoonful. Lith immediately started to cry, but there was no one to hear him. Cry all you want, Leech. Lith was now able to understand most of the common words, included Orpal's mockery. Today is just you and I. No mom in a shining armor to come to your rescue. After saying that, he gulped down another one. Lith felt like he was going crazy. Once again, he was helpless, his so-called magic useless in time of need. What could he possibly do, aside from blowing his cover? Ventilate him? Wet him? Using fire was too dangerous. A single meal was not worthy burning down a house. Lith's hunger was eating him, and his rage went above and beyond what he would have ever thought possible. You Fußstern. He yelled inwardly, feeling so tough, robbing a child. Then he saw the third spoonful, making a good half of his meal gone, moving toward Orpal's smug face. Lith's anger reached a new peak, his hatred burning like a fire. You are not my brother, he yelled inwardly. You are nothing but a filthy thief trash. And then, more than clicking, he felt something breaking inside like a dam that could not hold the raging waters anymore. I hope you choke on that spoon. USH*T. Lith waved his arm against Orpal in a final struggle, and then it happened. Lith felt the mana going out to his body, reaching the spoon already in Orpal's mouth and pushing it down hard. Orpal started to choke, and after removing the spoon from his throat, he started puking. Lith was so astonished to almost forget about both his rage and hunger. He had discovered something wonderful, a power that no one else in his family seemed to have. Lith had discovered spirit magic. Supreme Magus. Chapter 9, Understanding Spirit Magic. At that time, Alina and Raz, father, were coming back to the house upon hearing Lith's desperate cries. They ran back to check on him. When they found Orpal on the ground, puking, they understood what had happened. They already had suspicions, since whenever Orpal fed Lith, he was always hungrier than usual. But now they had proof. Inside the pool of vomit, the undigested creamy soup was as clear as the day. Raz became red with anger. You little. But had to stop. His other children had returned as well. I'm very disappointed in you, Orpal, said Alina, seeing that her hubby was too angry to speak. From now on, Alina will be the one feeding Lith. You can take all her shifts in the stable, since I don't think that even you could eat hay. But Mom, Orpal said, trying to defend himself. He hated cows and their smell. No buts, young man. Raz yelled. And that is not punishment enough. Alina, feel free to prepare one more bowl for Lith, and take the food from Orpal's share. He must learn that bad actions have consequences. They were speaking too fast for Lith, and there were too many unknown words. But Orpal had just turned pale, so it had to be good news. Orpal started crying and apologizing, but Lith made sure to cry louder, so Raz and Alina both ignored his pleas and sent him to take care of the animals. After being fed with a generous serving of soup and milk, Lith could finally focus on what had happened. After days of trial and error experiments, he had grasped the basics of his newfound ability and gained a much deeper understanding of magic. Lith had discovered that when he casted an elemental spell, it actually consisted in a three-step process. First, he would emit the mana. Then he had to mix it with the world energy that he was trying to manipulate. The last step was the hardest one, controlling the spell and its effects. Spirit magic skipped the second step. It used only his own power, without borrowing elemental energy. That made it more difficult than any magic he had practiced so far and more mana-consuming. It also required much more focus compared to normal magic. Pure mana had no physical form, so he could not rely on his eyes for manipulating its effects. All depended on his willpower and imagination. The clearer was the mental image of the action he wanted the mana to make, the better the result. The range was also very limited, barely reaching a meter, 28 feet, radius. Despite all its strict limitations, Lith started to practice anything but spirit magic. The ultimate discovery about it was that every improvement he did in spirit magic was also passed on all other kinds of magic. He didn't need to switch practicing between them anymore, and so he progressed in leap and bounds compared to before. From time to time, he would use a random elemental magic to check on his progress, reaching a new understanding of the profoundness of that element. The progress Lith made allowed him to also improve his breathing techniques. Through accumulation, he could now not only perceive how his mana core changed in size with practice, but also have a rough understanding of the amount of mana contained in his body. Using accumulation, he would feed the world energy to his mana core, allowing it to expand from the size of a pinhead to that of a glass marble. Once the mana core grew to marble size, further progress could only be made when the physical body forcefully compressed the mana core back to pinhead. Lith had no idea how the phenomenon worked, and had found no way around it. Mana core and body development had to go hand in hand. There was no shortcut. Bottlenecks happened when Lith tried to use accumulation when the mana core was still at its peak size. The world energy would be rejected by the mana core, going wild through his body and damaging it. By continuously undergoing expansion and compression cycles, his mana capacity was already incomparable to when he was just a newborn. After discovering and practicing spirit magic, Lith had a much finer control of his mana, inside and outside his body. He managed to modify the invigoration technique so that when he breathed in the world mana, he would combine it with his own, temporarily exceeding his limits. Then he would expand the resulting energy, moving it from the solar plexus outwards until even his body hair would be overflowing with mana. Ever since he invented invigoration, he had noticed qualitative changes to his body. Lith was now better at withstanding cold and head, and he would hardly ever get sick. When his whole family would catch a cold, he would either get over it before the symptoms manifested or recover in a few days. Unless it's all a crazy coincidence, improving invigoration is the only mean at my disposal to temper my body. If I am right, this means that I can use it as a crutch until I get big enough to do physical activity. He thought, hopefully, it should also help me overcome my bottleneck periods faster. It's a gamble, but it shouldn't do any harm. Also, between hunger and bottlenecks, there isn't much I can do as a 7-month-old baby. As for his family life, it also experienced some changes during the following months. After the soup incident with Orpal, a divide opened between the brothers. Lith was vengeful by nature, and so was his brother. Sometimes, when Orpal was angry, would call him Leech instead of Lith, since he always called him like that in his mind. Every slip of the tongue would cost him a serious scolding, and when he did it while harshly arguing with his parents, even a good spanking. Orpal blamed Lith for all of his misfortunes. The little runt always giggled when he was having a hard time. The relationship between Lith and his parents, instead, kept getting better and better. He had already started saying babble words, making sure to say mama when Alina embraced him and da whenever Raz came near him. If this world is even a bit similar to Earth's middle age, it is better to stay in my old man's good book until I am self-sufficient. This was Lith's reasoning. He was still very afraid of father figures, and the two of them didn't have much a relationship anyway. Raz would always be busy with something, letting his wife and eldest daughter spend the most time with the baby. To his defense, he had just wrongly assumed that Lith was too little to notice, and that they would have time catch up later in the future, like he did with his other sons. Raz really loved him, and Lith never ceased to amaze him. He couldn't remember him crying for no reason, not even when teething. If someone bumped into his cradle or raised his voice while Lith was asleep, or at least pretending to, he would not make a sound, just look around before going back to sleep. Lith increasingly grew fond of Eliza. It was more like a loving aunt than a sister to him. He could see himself in her, taking care of her little brother like he did with Carl. He would have loved to express this love, but all he could do was smile and laugh as soon as he saw her, and call her Lala. She was in fact the only one, beside his parents, to have a Babel name. It wasn't much, but it meant the world to her. And so, time went by. After 6 months from his arrival, Lith was put on the ground for the 5th time and started to crawl under strict supervision. At the 9th month, he started to walk and graduated himself from Babel words to real ones. On the day of his birthday, after discovering they had birthdays in that world too, he allowed himself to use simple phrases and started to make questions to complete his vocabulary. Knowing nothing about babies, it was very stressful finding the right timing for every little thing. Luckily, Lith could always resort on cheating to find out the proper time for him to learn to do something. He was already capable of understanding most of what he could hear, so he would always be open to suggestions. If Alina was dying for him to finally say mommy instead of mama, he would wait a couple of days before making it happen. If Raz cheered for Lith running to him, he did. The real problem was paying attention to everything Raz, Eliza, and Alina said, while being seemingly completely oblivious about their words. Another problem was that once they let him roam free in the dining room, they gave him also small wooden toys, expecting him to play and explore his surroundings. Lith already knew the dining room as the BAC of his hand, and there was not much to see in the first place. Yet he had to pretend to be curious about it. That was the hardest thing he had ever done since becoming a baby, and scared him to death. He had no clue how a child would explore such bland environment, and his paranoia about blowing his cover made him sweating bullets. Seeing the expectation in their eyes, he started from the nearest thing, the fireplace. The fire was not lit. The logs were cold and covered in ashes. When he got closer, Raz stopped him. This is the fireplace. Now is safe, but fire is bad. Fire hurts. No touching it, never. Lith looked at him, seemingly confused, before trying to put his hand in the ashes. Raz grabbed his hand, blocking him. Fire is bad. No touching it. Never. His father repeated. Lith stared in his eyes like he was deeply in thought before asking. Fire bad? Yes, very bad. Raz replied while nodding. Good gods, this little one sure likes danger. Seeing their increasingly worried expressions, Lith believed to have found a way out that torment. He would keep putting himself in danger, trying to climb on the table and going into the kitchen rummaging through pots and knives. Quickly, they decided that adventure time was over. They made him sit on an old cloth spreaded over the wooden floor and gave him toys to play with while they recovered from the stress. He had a little wooden horse, some kind of cart, and an odd-looking dog thingy. Playing was much easier to him. Lith did not need to create stories or explaining what he was doing. He could just use playtime to practice spirit magic. Lith would actually never use his hands to move the toys, making them float as close as possible to his fingers. He really enjoyed those moments. Lith could finally openly rejoice, scream, and laugh anytime he made a new discovery or a breakthrough, and all his parents would see was a happy child lost in his fantasies. Who would have ever thought that such a quiet little fellow could have such a vivid imagination? Raz said with a big, proud smile on his face. Look at him. All he has is just some old toys, yet looks like he has the whole world in the palm of his hand. Supreme Magus. Chapter 10, Growing Pains. The following years weren't easy on Lith. He was finally allowed to do a lot of questions, filling most of the holes in his vocabulary, and starting to finally learn about his family in the new world. He learned that they were living in the village of Lusha that was part of the county of Lustria, which in turn was part of the Griffin Kingdom. His parents knew about the neighboring countries by name, but that was it. They knew nothing about the life outside the village, nor they cared about it. In their eyes, the king was some sort of mythical beast. They put all their faith and worries in Count Lusha. Not only he administered justice and taxes in the county, he would also always take part in Lusha's spring festival as the guest of honor. His parents never mentioned to their children anything about magic, wars, or history. They only told them tales that could be easily dismissed as bedtime stories, even in this new world. All of their stories were filled with beautiful princesses, valiant heroes, and villainous tyrants. Lith was truly dissatisfied by such little information. He wanted to know what was the planet's name, what was the stage of scientific development it had developed. He wanted to learn about the history of magic, the lore, the legends, anything that could give him at least a clue about what to expect from life. But it was clear they knew little more than gossip, so he could not make questions he was not even supposed to think about. At least his family tree was much easier to fully understand. Alina and Raz had married very early, even by village standards, barely 16. Raz, being an only child, had inherited his father's farm, where they were currently living. Alina got pregnant shortly after the marriage, giving birth to the twins Eliza and Orpal. Then she got pregnant again every 2 years. That meant that Raz and Alina were currently 25 years old, Eliza and Orpal 8 years old, Trine 6 years old, Tista 4 years old, and finally Lith 2 years old. In fact, most of the information were leached from his siblings' questions, Lith was mostly limited to a "what's this? Why is that?" kind of question. Spending more and more time with the rest of the family, he also discovered why, despite his father owned such a nice farm, with its own barn and hen house, had so much problems putting food on the table. Tista was born with a congenital condition that prevented her from doing any physical exertion and made her also prone to illness. Fast pacing was enough to leave her out of breath. She would chuff from time to time, and when things were about to turn for the worse, the cough would become violent. At that point, one of her parents would have to run to the village to let Nana visit and heal her. But she could not really cure her, only alleviate the symptoms and return her to her natural state. And while a checkup wasn't expensive, the treatment was. Also, even if Raz did go picking her up and then brought Nana back home, it would still cost an extra. Doing a round trip meant her losing business, so she required compensation. It was the constant need for the healer to put such a strain on their budget. Lith felt very sorry for her. Despite not having spent much time with Tista, she was precious for both Alina and Eliza, and that was more than enough to make her precious for him too. He felt helpless, cursing his inability to ever practice light and darkness magic. Light magic required a patient, and until he had gained a solid grasp of how it worked and what was this world's human anatomy, he would not dare putting anyone's health at risk. Darkness magic was another story. Lith had only seen it once. No one in his family used it. And even in that one occasion, he had clearly felt the destructive power it held. He was also biased against it, since on Earth dark magic would always be associated with evil practices and undeads. So he had no desire to dabble with something potentially horrifying. Lith could only live on, hoping to eventually get some training in magic, while enduring the madness that he was getting used to call family life. He had to be lively, but not too much. He had to be curious, but not too much. He had to run around, but never get out of the door. His parents were never satisfied. If he tried to sit in corner meditating, they would worry because he was too quiet or too lazy. If he tried to move around or help them, he would be scolded for getting in the way. They refused to teach him chore magic. That was the name of the lesser spells they used on their daily life, and prohibited him to learn them. Lith could not go outside without being accompanied by someone, could not get near to the fireplace, could not make too many questions. Everything was basically prohibited until he grew up. More than once Lith wanted to scream, "I may be biologically young, but I am actually the oldest in here, damn it." But all he could do was suck it up and obey. His feud with Orpal never resolved, and he could clearly feel Trian's hostility on his brother's behalf. Clearly Orpal was for Trian what Eliza was for Lith, his role model. Unlike Orpal, Trian would not completely ignore him, even when their parents were absent. But Lith could clearly see that every time his brother helped him, it was just to be polite. There was no kindness between them. Lith quickly started ignoring him in return. "I have already spent half of my old life being worried about dysfunctional family members. Been there, done that. So thank you, but no thank you. If you want to be a jerk, be my guest. I don't give a damn about you." These were his thoughts about the matter, so he let things fester. Once he became 3 years old, he could not take it anymore. The boredom caused by the cold winter months, where he was basically stuck at home 24/7, aggravated by the constant hunger, was about to drive him insane. It was a stormy afternoon, and the family was gathered around the fireplace. Alina was teaching her daughters how to sew. Raz was teaching Orpal how to carve wood, while Trian and Lith were only allowed to watch. They were still too little to handle any sharp object. Even sewing was off limits. Lith had already asked, baffling his father and flattering her mother, "You are too little, and your hands are still too clumsy." She replied, and Alina was right. Lith's body felt even clumsier than his old one before he started practicing martial arts. Just the thought of all the lost muscle memory was enough to make him cry. So he patiently waited that Raz finished instructing Orpal, and then Lith mustered all his courage and asked him to teach him how to read, write, and count. Raz was flabbergasted. "You are too young. Usually kids wait until they're 6 years old to go to school and learn. Don't you think it's boring?" That was the philosophy every man in his lineage had always upheld. Boring? What could possibly be more boring than sit here doing nothing, like yesterday and the day before? And probably tomorrow, too. Please, Daddy, try me. I beg you, please, please, please. Raz didn't know how to say no. Lith had never asked him anything before. Even when he is clearly still hungry, if he notices there is no more food, he never asks for more. He thought, unlike Orpal, I don't know if it's Lith that is too good, or I'm just spoiling Orpal too much. He really wanted a way out, but Alina was already staring at him. Her hands never stopped sewing, her mouth explaining the girls what they were doing wrong, but her eyes were clearly set on him. Damn it, what can I say? Learning does not even require dangerous tools. That's it, the tools. I'm such a moron sometimes. Raz looked in Lith's puppy eyes, his heart squeezed as in a vice, but he still replied, I'm sorry, son. We have nothing you could possibly write on, so I can't teach you. Lith had considered things through before asking, so he had already a solution at hand. He picked the biggest tray they had and filled it with the ashes collected in a bucket beside the fireplace. Now we do. We can write as much as we want. Raz was amazed by Lith's ingenuity, and so was Alina. He was about to object again when he noticed that the stare had turned into a frown. Her hands were moving too fast, and that meant trouble for him. There was a storm outside. He could not run away from the one that was brewing inside. So with a deep sigh, he gave up. From what do you want to start? Raz could only hope that Lith would get bored fast and let him return to his leisure. Count, Lith promptly replied. So Raz sat on the floor beside him and started drawing lines in the ash. Lith was ecstatic. The numbers they used had a different shape from the Arabic numerals, but aside from that they were identical in use, even the calculation methods were the same. So he kept the new numbers in the upper row to learn their shape, and then started doing the multiplication tables. He could actually do such simple math in his head, but he needed to engrave the new numbers in both his mind and body. Once he finished, Lith started taking requests from his audience, and when Orpal sarcastically asked, how much is 124 times 11? He quickly replied with flat 1364, leaving them all speechless. Alina could not help herself standing up and lifting Lith up in a big hug. My little genius, I'm so proud of you. In less than 1 hour, he had mastered what it would take others a full year to do. Eliza and Tista soon joined her in the embrace, congratulating their little brother, while the male side of the family was still flabbergasted. In rural areas, they learned how to count only to not get ripped off when they sold or bought merchandise. So they remembered only addition and subtraction, letting the useless multiplications and divisions fade away in their minds. Reading and writing required more time, but it was equally simple. Lith already knew most of the words and how to spell them. He only needed to learn the alphabet and memorize it to be able to read and write. Once again, his family was stunned, and the only one not rejoicing with them was Orpal, left alone with his envy and scorn. Supreme Magus. Chapter 11, I Know That I Know Nothing. Having officially learned how to read and write, Lith practiced every day. While his family considered him a genius, he knew better. Needing to practice hard to memorize just 21 letters and 10 numbers, Lith did not feel much brilliant. Striking the iron while it was still hot, he asked Raz to carve for him a wooden ruler, 50 centimeters, 7 inches, long and 3 centimeters, 2 inches, both high and wide. In the front, he had engraved all the alphabet, on the back the numbers. It was Lith's clutch during his homework, a tool necessary for him to be free of practicing any time without bothering his parents. Raz was still on cloud 9, so he didn't make any question about the oddly big sizes Lith requested. He could have easily made it much thinner and shorter, making it easier to carry around. But Lith refused the proposal, begging him to fulfill his wish. Lith had not missed Orpal's hostile glare every time someone called him a genius. He had to be sure for it to be not easy to break or go missing by accident. It was also the perfect pretext to always carry around something he could practice spirit magic on. When the weather finally cleared up, Alina decided that it was the perfect moment for Tista to be checked out by Nana. With all the cold and wind during those last days, no matter how much effort Raz and Orpal had put in the house's maintenance, it had still been kind of drafty. Tista had been coughing enough for Alina being seriously worried about her. So she took the mule cart and brought Tista and Lith to the village of Lusha. The bad weather had lasted too long, and the accumulated farm work needed everyone's help to be finished before another frost wave arrived. She had to bring Lith along. He was too small to be left alone. After stuffing them with the warmer clothes they had, the trip began. Lith was really happy. It was the first time for him seeing the world outside the farm's bounds. There was much he could learn from such experience. On the road, they were bothered more than once by stray grafts. They were wasp-like insects with a venomous sting at the end of their abdomen. Compared to Earth's wasps, they were much hairier and blue instead of yellow. Why in the Great Mother's name are they still around? Alina complained. They are supposed to be asleep during winter. One graft was particularly stubborn, and despite all their shooing, it kept going back until it got too close to Tista for comfort. Lith slammed his hands hard, missing it entirely. He was still nimble as a brick, but his spirit magic wasn't. It had already reached a radius of full 10 meters, 32, 8 feet, radius of effect, so the graft was squashed effortlessly. Lith showed the prey with pride. Don't worry, big sister. I'll always protect you. After hugging him, Tista was really curious about the dead insect, but Alina was still worried by the venom. So after throwing it away, they resumed their trip. When they came in sight of Lucia, much of Lith's doubts got cleared up. It wasn't just his family. The whole village resembled closely one of those early Middle Ages drawings he had seen in history books. There was no sign of any complex technology. Even a windmill or a watermill would have been considered a marvel of science. When Lith asked Alina about the village, she explained that only artisans, scholars, and merchants lived there. The rest of the population lived in their own farms, tending the fields and raising livestock. Lucia consisted in a few dozens of 1 or 2 stories, high wooden houses well spaced between them. Not even one was made out of stone or bricks. There was also no road pavement of any sorts. The space between the houses was just like the road to the village, bare earth and mud. From the signs hanged outside the buildings, he could spot a blacksmith, a tavern, and a tailor shop. The bakery didn't need any sign or advertisement. The delicious smell that came out its chimney was enough to make every passerby's mouth watery. Lith's hunger stroked so hard that he already knew what he would have dreamed about that night. When they arrived at Nana's house, Lith was surprised noticing it was bigger than their own, yet Alina had told him more than once that Nana lived alone. In his eyes, it meant that either she was from a rich family, or more likely healing was a lucrative business. Lith decided that he had to master light magic as soon as possible. The door was open, and inside Lith felt the familiar feeling of a doctor's waiting room. Inside there was a single huge room that smelled of medicinal herbs and incense. At the end of the room, on the left there was a door, probably leading to Nana's living quarter. On the right, there was a huge, wide curtain, behind which Nana was visiting and treating the patients. The rest of the space was filled with benches and chairs, and many of them were already occupied. It seemed that many families had decided to make use of the good weather. Alina removed all the extra clothing from her children before instructing them to be quiet and don't disturb others. The waiting room was filled with bored mothers, and soon Alina joined the chatting, sharing her experiences and advices with them. Lith could wander around undisturbed. The women were too busy keeping their children under control to take notice of his existence. The room was bare and uninteresting, but once he got close to the curtain, he stumbled on a treasure. He found a small open cabinet filled with books about magic. Maybe in this world is the equivalent of a doctor hanging his degrees and masters. Many of the titles were specific about an element or its application, but one caught his eye immediately. It had the basics of magic written on the cover. After checking that no one was paying him attention, he grabbed it and started reading. I'm only 3 years old. I can afford a better to ask forgiveness than permission attitude. Lith then moved to a corner, giving his back to the curtain, hoping to go unnoticed as long as possible. It was clearly a book for beginners, so he skipped the introduction, going straight for the element's description. Lith discovered that water magic was not just about conjuring and manipulating water. It also allowed the user to lower anything's temperature. Any magic apprentice was supposed to be able to generate ice and use it as a mean of both offense and defense. Air magic, too, had an ability that he had never taken in consideration. Their magic highest peak was weather control, but even at the basic level, a mage could generate lightning. Fire and earth were just plain and simple as he had pictured them all along. So he moved to the last two elements. While reading, it became clear to him that because of magic, whoever had written the book had no idea what anatomy was. The book would speak about the importance of keeping a wound clean. There was no use of terms like disinfection or sepsis, so he barely found unknown medical terms. Lith remained dumbfounded upon discovering that light and darkness were explained together instead than in separate chapters. According to the book, both elements were the bread and butter of any healer. Darkness magic could be used as a weapon, but it was not explained in detail. The author was very clear, stressing out the fact that he was not a fighter and that beginners should never bite more than they could chew. Then he proceeded to explain that darkness magic wasn't either good or bad, just an element like the others. It was an invaluable tool for a healer, since it allowed to clean wounds, tools, or even to fumigate houses from rats and insects to avoid the spreading of diseases. Also, it was the only way of getting rid of parasites that had grown inside the patient, since light magic would allow the healer to detect their presence, but could do no harm to them. Light and darkness worked best when used together. Light magic's specialty was the ability to perceive life forces and scan them for anomalies. It also allowed to correct such anomalies and to guarantee an instant recovery from most diseases. Restoring broken bones was more difficult and was explained in another chapter. Lith felt incredibly ignorant and stupid. He could have discovered most of those elemental properties on his own if he hadn't been blinded by his narrow-minded superstition. How could I possibly have been so idiotic? I have lived here more than 3 years, and I'm still thinking like this is a video game with fixed rules and levels. Darkness is evil and light is holy or something. No, this is science. Damn it, the same one I studied all my life. If fire magic is converting mana into heat, then water magic is nothing but converting mana into cold, condensing the water in the atmosphere, and turning it into the liquid state. It's all so obvious. It's like the damned Columbus egg. He was about to turn the page and learn about healing broken bones when a firm hand squeezed his shoulder, locking him into place. That's not a toy, young man. I really hope that you have not damaged it, otherwise your family will have to pay for it dearly. Supreme Magus. Chapter 12, Learning a Trade. Lith had been so engrossed reading to forget where he was, throwing caution to the wind. When Nana caught him red-handed, he was startled enough to yelp. I thought I knew every single rascal, but I failed to recognize this one. What's your name, kid? Lith. What's yours? He replied while making puppy eyes. Nana was now more curious than angry. Lith? Do you mean Alina's little imp? No wonder your face is new to me. You were just a newborn the last time I saw you. Nana's presence had made the chatter stop. Some women wanted to ask her how long until their turn. Others were just curious. Alina jumped out from her chair, apologizing on Lith's behalf. There's no need to apologize, Alina. Nana said, No harm, no fault. The little imp has not damaged the book while playing with it. Yes, Mom, there is no need to apologize. Lith hated when someone spoke of him like he wasn't there. And I was not playing with it, I was just reading. Reading? Young man, how old are you? 3 years and something? If this is a joke, it's not funny. I never expected one of Alina's children to be such a liar. He is not lying. During the last storm, Lith was bored, so he asked his father to teach him how to read, write, and count. Here is proof. Alina handed Nana the wooden ruler. Alina's rebuttal had caught her by surprise. She realized to have struck a nerve. After studying the ruler, Nana had to admit it was a clever learning tool. Tell your husband that this thing is really a good idea. He could sell it to Teacher Hall. It never hurts to have extra money. Alina wouldn't let her change the subject, not until she apologized for calling her son a liar. Raz didn't invent it. Lith did, so he could study alone without bothering anyone. Nana was shaken by all those sudden revelations. Her pride wanted to avoid apologizing, but insinuating that Alina too was lying in front of all those people would have hurt her whole family's reputation. So, young man, how much is 7 times 6? 42. Nana took the book from Lith's hands and after opening a random page, she gave it back. What is written there? Start from the top of the page. Lith suppressed a smirk. The first thing to understand while studying magic is that it's just a tool. Anyone can use it, but only few can actually use it properly. In fact, okay, that's enough. I owe you an apology, Lith. Yet she said it while looking at Alina. Seems your son is indeed blessed by the light, dear. The room was once again resounding with chatter, but this time they were all discussing the same topic. What does Nana mean with blessed by the light? Isn't that just a fairy tale? I wish my son was that smart. Every morning, just sending him to school is a war of attrition. Not to mention getting some actual results. Those were the most common comments. Lith kept hitting the iron while it was still hot. Can I? Suddenly, he realized that he ignored the word borrow. Take it with me for some time. I will return it as it is. I promise. And what would you do with it? Can you already use magic? Nana's reply would have normally been quite different, but she had had enough surprises for the day and could not afford any more sarcasm or skepticism. Yes, I can. Lith replied before realizing his mistake. I'm an idiot. I just blew my cover. Years of careful planning, ruined by this big mouth of mine. The only thing I can do is damage control. Really? And what can you do? Yes, Lith. What can you do? Alina rebuked. Her right foot was furiously tapping the floor in annoyance. Lith knew he was in trouble. I can do wind and water charm magic, he said with a low apologetic tone while staring at his own shoes. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you prohibited me to use any magic, but everyone else in the house always uses it, and I was so bored. The chattering increased in volume. Alina was really angry, but she could not scold him in public. Not when they were staring at them with admiration. Nana seems really impressed. Maybe this is a turning point in Lith's life. If she takes him as her apprentice, we could have a healer in our family. I can't ruin this opportunity. So, she kept silent, wondering about his son's future. Would you please show me? Nana asked, smiling for the first time. In for a penny, in for a pound. Here goes everything. Lith thought. Breza. Lith twirled his middle and index finger 2 times, creating as many tiny whirlwinds that he used to quickly sweep the room. He pretended to lose control from time to time. His goal was to impress, not to brag or scare people out of their wits. Oh. Nana laughed in admiration. She could see more and more of her in the little imp. Nana, too, had been a precocious brat. When she was his age, her talent was better, but Lith was still a sight to behold. Usually men were less talented for magic, since women with their prerogative to give birth were naturally more in tune with the life force of the planet. Some called that world energy, others simply called it mana. Also, country boys were usually blockheads, more inclined to hard works in the fields or in the military rather than spend years on books. Now I want you to do a thing for me. You said you can conjure water, right? Lith nodded in response. Now call upon water. It does not matter how little. But then, you have to not let it fall. You must make it float like this. A perfect sphere of water the size of a fist appeared 1/2 meter from Nana's open hand. Lith could not comprehend the why of such a specific request, but he complied. Joran. He conjured less than a glass worth of water, keeping its form irregular and unstable. Lith could not afford any more mistakes. His focus peaked, trying to make his lack of control convincing. The water floated for 3 seconds before falling off. But instead of hitting the floor, it started floating again, becoming another perfect sphere orbiting around Nana's spell like the moon does around the earth. Lith was flabbergasted, not by Nana's control on the mana flow. He was already able of doing the same, if not better. He could not avert the eyes from the spectacle in front of him. Both spheres of water were constantly spinning on themselves, reflecting everything around them. They would capture the light from the sun, turning it into sparkles of rainbow. Lith had always seen magic like a force to be reckoned with, a great tool to build his future with. But he never thought of it as beautiful. For the first time in over 3 years, he was not pretending anymore. He was simply amazed, staring at the dancing lights while the memories of his old life flooded his mind. He suddenly remembered all the hours that he spent as kid, hiding in the planetarium together with his little brother Carl. They would dream of becoming astronauts, to run away to the stars where no one would ever hurt them again. And just like that, his grief returned, stronger than ever, fighting the joy out. The pain for the loss overwhelmed him. Tears started streaming from his eyes. "Lith, are you all right?" Alina's voice woke him up from his stupor. Realizing how weak he had allowed himself to be, Lith felt deeply disgusted. Water is just water. No need to get soft over a measly light show. Soldier up and follow the plan. Lith steeled himself, sealing away all the feelings that he deemed useless. "I'm done getting hurt," he thought. "Yes, Mommy, I'm all right. I was just moved from the old lady's magic. My name is Neria, Lith, but everyone calls me Nana." "Why Nana?" Nana was usually a term of endearment used for the family's grandmother. "You see, when I was a young maiden, everyone called me by my name. But then time passed, and I helped so many children come into this world that they started to call me Mama. After even more time passed, those children had children of their own, and they started to call me Nana." She ruffled Lith's hair. "I have a proposal for you. Now you are too little, but when you become 6 years old, instead of going to school together with those blockheads, you could come here instead. So you could read those books as much as you want. And maybe you could learn a trade." "Mine." Lith tilted his head, playing dumb. "I don't know, you don't seem nice." "I would like the books, though," he replied, while hiding behind his mother, only half his face visible behind her legs. Alina didn't know if to laugh or cry. Her dream had come true, but Lith didn't understand what he was turning down. "Please excuse him, Nana. He is just 3 years old. He has no idea what he is saying. He doesn't even know the importance of apprenticeship." 3 years old, Nana repeated. "It's almost too good to be true. But you were right. If he had to choose between gold and toys, he would probably pick the latter. We'll have this conversation again 3 years from now." She knelt down, looking Lith straight in the eyes. "If you don't become dumb as all the other boys in this village, I'll take you as my apprentice. If you're still interested in magic and books, of course." Lith nodded, grabbing his mother gown, looking for protection. His weak and scared appearance hid his inner rage. 3 years? I could have as well starved by then. And all because of you, greedy hag. He was so sick of being hungry, he wanted to bite her out of frustration. "Calm down, Derek, and remember all of your lessons. Suck it up and grow stronger, because only strength will make you free. Only power will keep your family safe." Supreme Magus. Chapter 13, Learning a Trade. Again, Nana's work ethic didn't allow for favoritism of any kind. Lith may have been his future apprentice, but Tista had to wait for her turn like everyone else. Lith hadn't been so happy of being stuck in the queue since his student's days in college, when he would use every single second to review his weakest subjects. So much to read and so little time. Better to cram light and dark magic, since they're the only elements outside the physics as I know it. In the best-case scenario, it will take years to get my hands on a book again, and there's only so much I can learn as self-taught. When it came their turn, he studied carefully how the healer performed the light magic Vinaya Rad 2. It was the same life force detecting spell she had used on him 3 years ago, and this time he had a better understanding of magic and a way better standpoint. Being next to her, Lith could appreciate every gesture and hand movement Nana used to amplify the spell effectiveness. The light enveloped Tista's body, quickly turning gray around her chest, clearly outlining the shape of her lungs. "I have good news, and I have bad news. The good news is that Tista's condition is the same as always. There's no sign of degeneration this time. The bad news is that it doesn't seem to be improving either. I'm afraid that she will remain like this forever. The more she grows, the less are the chances that her body will be able to somehow fix itself." The air in the room turned heavy. A lifetime of illness was barely better than no life at all. Lith was so shocked to completely forget about the books. The whole world meant nothing to him if he could not share it with the only 3 people he loved and trusted. They came out of Nana's house in low spirits, returning home without speaking a word. Once arrived, Alina shared the bad news, searching for Raz's arms before starting to cry. One by one, the whole family burst into tears, hugging each other in search of comfort. Lith allowed himself to cry, cursing the cruel fate that had befallen his sister. "What good is magic if I keep being helpless? Why do I keep reincarnating, simply to replace one living hell with another? Is this just bad luck, or is it my fault? Could it be that in some previous life, I committed such an atrocious act that now all those I love are cursed? Could this be my punishment? During the following days, Lith kept second-guessing every life choice he made, before accepting the fact that bad things happens. Tista was already ill when he resurrected for the second time. It couldn't be his fault. Having been accepted as Nana's apprentice, he could now practice magic openly. Soon he proved capable of cleaning the whole house by himself, relieving his mother and sisters from all the chores. Thanks to darkness magic, cleaning dishes and cauldrons became a matter of minutes. Nothing organic, be it food residue or grease, could escape being turned into dust by a single spark of dark energy. He also made countless experiments with light magic in search for a cure. Yet all he managed to do was keeping the symptoms at bay. Tista now needed much less treatment from Nana, but was still prisoner in her own body. This caused Orpal to hate him more and more. Show off. How I'm supposed to enjoy my life with him constantly breathing on my neck. Not only Leech shares the housework with Mom, but also spends so much time with Tista. Mom and Dad always praised him for his so-called talent and intelligence. And now, they never shut up about Leech saving the family a lot of money by tending Tista's condition on his own. No one gives a damn about me wasting my time and sweat doing all the farm work. Gods, why did you let him live? Why you didn't give me any talent? Oblivious of his brother's feelings, Lith was not coping much better. His magic power and comprehension of mana kept growing, but could not erase the perpetual taste of failure that accompanied him. In the following year, he could not feel any joy regarding magic. Every discovery was useless, all his power meaningless. And so, he was finally 4 years old. The period between 4 and 6 years in Lucia was called the Golden Age, since the child was big enough to have some freedom and too little to be of any help in the daily activities. They would be allowed to play all day without a care in the world. It was the perfect time to make friends and grow closer to one's own neighbors and deepen the ties between the families. The day of his 4th birthday, after he finished the chores, Eliza introduced him to all their neighbors before returning home. He was supposed to socialize and play, but Lith had other plans. There was no amount of failures or grief that could make him forget for long the hunger that consumed him since he was barely 5 months old. Raz's farm was on the western edge of Lucia's farmlands, a little less than a kilometer, 0.62 miles, apart from the great woods known as Tron. Despite the pretentious name, it wasn't particularly dangerous. The people who lived in nearby villages depended on the forest as their primary source of timber for their everyday life. Tron was also abundant in wildlife, so those bold and lucky enough would go hunting all year around, searching for precious meat, warm fur, or both. It was impossible to meet monsters in the forest, unless one went several kilometers deep. Since there was no need for exploring Tron in detail, the inner areas were still uncharted territory. There was a reason if Lith had never practiced martial arts in the New World, not even the footwork. The constant practice of magic required a lot of energy, and his household lacked the necessary resources for his training. Lith was already skinnier than all of his siblings. Any more exertion, and he would turn in a pile of bones. He needed food, but being a city boy, he knew nothing about butchering. He needed a teacher. And that was why he was headed for the house of Celia Fastero, the only hunter among their neighbors. The problem is that I have no idea how to get her to help. I'm still too little for apprenticeship, and even if I wasn't, it's unlikely she had not heard about Nana's offer. She has nothing to gain helping me. I can only hope she is a kind and benevolent woman. Celia's house was a single-story wooden house, much smaller than Lith's, about 60 square meters large. There was no hen house or barn. Except for the space in near proximity of the house, the fields were uncultivated, full of weeds, tall grass, and whatever the wind hand planted over time. She clearly has no interest in farming and stock breeding, and that's good news. Means her business is good enough. I wonder what's in the shed near the house. It's almost as big as the house itself. Lith knocked, his innards tied in a knot from the nervousness. The door opened almost immediately. You again? Are you lost or something? Celia was a woman in her early 30s, 1.7 meters tall, the skin tan from the years-long exposure to the sun. Her black hair was kept short with a haircut identical to Earth's military standards. She could have been considered very cute, but the small bosom, coupled with her sharp eyes and rough attitude, made her manlier than most farmers. She wore a leather hunting jacket over a green shirt, green cargo pants, and brown hunting boots with a soft outer sole to limit the noise made while moving. Hi, Miss Fast Arrow. I need a favor. Could you please teach me how to skin and gut animals? Celia raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I am hungry. Not having any lever on her, Lith had decided that truth was the best policy. I've been hungry long enough to forget how being full feels. I know I can hunt, but I also know that without proper handling, meat goes bad and is inedible. No, you got me wrong. I mean, why should I help you? What's in for me? Now she was knitting her eyebrows. What do you want? Lith asked while bottling up the urge to kill her slow and painfully. He was hungry enough to see her as quarry. Honestly, I don't believe a runt that barely reaches my belt can hunt anything, not even a rat. And since teaching is a waste of time, it demands compensation. She scratched her chin, searching for a deal bad enough to drive the pest away. She never wanted a child of her own, let alone dealing with someone else's. So, if you want to learn from me, first you must bring here some game. If you mess up while playing butcher, you'll ruin my merchandise, wasting my goods and time. So here's my deal. Whatever you bring me, I'll teach you how to skin and gut it. But half of it is mine for the trouble. Take it or leave it. So much for the kind and benevolent woman. This is plain extortion. Lith thought, I'll take it. How long will you stay home? He replied, I'll be here all day. I have a lot of work to do. Why? Because when I get back with my prey, I'll need your help. Don't forget our deal. Lith turned around, moving toward the woods. Seeing the little runt act all tough, without a bow, traps, or even just a bag for the game, Celia could not help but laugh out loud. Then until the door suddenly slammed on her face, sending her but first on the floor. After getting up, she went to the nearest window. Lith was still in the same spot, but his face was turned towards her door, his eyes glowing bright in the dim light of the dawn. Lith did not need to hunt something big. As long as it was meat, it was the perfect prey. Most of the animals would run away as soon he came too close, but not all of them. Birds and squirrels perched on tree branches felt safe. But Lith's spirit magic had reached a range of over 20 meters, 21.9 yards. They were all within his reach. He only needed to extend his open hand towards a quarry, then squeeze and turn it for a neck to be broken. In less than 20 minutes, he had killed 2 odd feathered birds and 2 squirrels. I could catch more, but I want to pay that harpy as little as possible. While returning to the huntress house, his greed was debating fiercely with his rage. Damn it, I wish I could just ask my father. Our farm has a hen house. We eat chicken, so he must know how to butcher it. But if I do, then I will be forced to share my quarry in equal parts. And if there is something that I hate more than being robbed by that harpy, is the idea of Orpal and Tryon having the same amount of meat as me. Or worse, even more, being older. I hunted this game. This meat is mine. They will only be allowed to eat my scraps, when and if I want so. When Lith got to the door, he had calmed down, the rage hidden by his business face. He took deep breaths before knocking again. When Celia saw him, was on the verge of mocking him, calling him a quitter for giving up in less than an hour. But then Lith showed her his game, making her whole. Never underestimate how hard a hunter's job is. Speech die in her throat. Supreme Magus. Chapter 14, Learning a Trade, again 2. How'd you do it? Celia asked, still recovering from the surprise. Magic. I am blessed by the light. Didn't you hear the news? Celia started rummaging her brain until the answer made sense. Oh, I get it now. You're the magic kid that's on everybody's mouth in Lucia. That explains a lot, including your shitty attitude. Excuse me? You found a scrawny kid on your door, asking for help. And what you did was send him away with a rip-off deal, even laughing at his efforts. And I'm the one with a shitty attitude. Lith was now so angry that even the idea of sharing his prey did not seem so bad anymore. Celia laughed out loud. Kid, you really are funny in the head. First, when you come at the door of a stranger asking for help, the best you can hope for is to be sent away with a polite kick in the butt. If I had to comply with every madman's request, I would be broke in a jiffy. Second, you had the guts to slam the door at me and then come back like nothing happened. That's a shitty attitude. Listening to her point of view, Lith could only agree. For 4 years, he had been a recluse, his only interactions with the family members. He had got too used getting a yes as an answer, forgetting the basic social interaction rules and even common sense. His hunger didn't help either, making him single-minded and prone to anger. Lith realized that Celio was right, and what he did that morning was just a temper tantrum. "I'm really sorry," he said earnestly, looking her in the eyes. "I have no excuses for my behavior. I would understand if you wanted to call off our deal." Celia started laughing even harder. "Hold your horses, kid. I said that you're crazy and rude, and I like that. As you so kindly pointed out, I'm a bit of jerk myself. And dog does not eat dog. Our deal is still valid." She handed him a small knife with a wooden handle. Rule number 1, bleed out the game as soon as possible. If the blood starts clotting, the meat is ruined. Make a deep incision in the neck and then hang them upside down to make the blood drain out. She pointed him to a clothesline. "When you don't need the fur, I always cut off the head directly. Makes things faster." Lith put down the knife and conjured water, making it coat his whole hand. Then he froze it, turning it into a razor-sharp blade, cutting off the bird's head, using the knife only for the squirrels. Celio whistled with approval. "Nice trick. You don't shy away from blood, don't you? As I've told you before, I am hungry. Too hungry to care about big round eyes or a warm fur. I only see them as food." Celia gave him thumbs up. "That's the right attitude for a hunter." Then she took the animals and hanged them, thinking the clothesline was too high for Lith to reach. Lith did not feel the need to correct her. Since we were building a master-apprentice relationship and all that CR*P, mind you telling why come to me instead of your father or mother? I don't know your family, but this is something that any farmer knows how to do. It would be too expensive having someone else butcher your livestock. Indeed, Lith concurred, pondering how to answer. He looked her straight in the eyes before asking. "Just between us, master-apprentice secret, and all that **P? Celia nodded, surprised receiving an actual answer instead of a cranky remark. "As far as I can remember, me and my brothers never had a good relationship. Things are pretty bad, especially with my older brother." Lith decided that he needed to take that load off his chest. Talking to a stranger was the best way to relieve his stress and ruin Orpal's reputation. Truth was indeed the best policy. "I do not know if it's because of my magic, but I always ate a lot. That would not be a big deal if I hadn't 4 siblings, one of which has a congenital condition. Her treatments cost quite a lot, and that is barely necessary to keep her house ridden. Thank the gods I'm an only child. But what does that have to do with your older brother?" Lith pretended to not have heard her. "This means that despite my parents' hard work, we don't have much food on the table." Lith pointed at his thin arm to make her feel guilt. "And my brother is a growing boy too, so he would like to have much more chow than he actually has. From time to time, especially during winter, he had fits of rage where he would accuse me of everything that goes wrong in his life. He often said things like, 'Why the heck did you have so many children if you cannot properly feed them? Why does he have to get almost as much as food as me? He does nothing while I work my ass in the fields all year around. This is not my brother. This is a leech that is sucking my life away. I wish you died that cursed day.'" Lith did his best Orpal impression. "Are you making this up to make me feel guilty, kid? Because that's sick." Celia was knitting her eyebrows, doubting someone could say such things to his little brother. Lith shook his head, sighing. "I wish. Did your father give him a good beating? Maybe that could help him come to his senses." Lith shook his head again. "No, this started when I was still very little, and even when my father resorted to spanking, it only made things worse, to the point that I now sleep in the girls' room." Celia bit her lips to avoid making a sex joke. "Too soon." "Too soon for what?" "Nothing. Please continue." "That was until a year ago. Then I started practicing magic, and soon I was skilled enough to do almost all house chores by myself. Sometimes I help with the livestock too. I even managed to keep my sister's condition under control. Lith took a deep breath before finding the strength to add, most of the times. Then everything should be good now, right? Wrong. The house needs repairs, and so does the barn and most of the working tools. If you also take in consideration all the random sh*t that happens and takes priority, I don't see her situation getting any better soon, and neither does my brother. Now he can't put the blame on me anymore, so the last time he took it out on my ill sister, saying things that I refused to repeat out loud. Lith spat on the ground to get rid of the dirty taste the memory gave him, to the point of saying that it would be better for her to— Lith pointed at the hang game. To put her down like an animal? Kid, we may be jerks, but your brother is a lunatic. Lith gritted his teeth, remembering Orpal's exact words. It will be much better for her, for all of us. She can't run, she can't work. Tista will never be able to make friends, fall in love, or have children of her own. She is bound to be a burden for the family. And what will happen when you guys are no more? Who will take care of her? Eliza? Or maybe the little leech wonder? Lith could still vividly recall his mother crying from those cruel words. Eliza and Tista running into her arms. Raz beating Orpal so hard he could not walk for days. Indeed, he replied to Celia with a growl. And that's is why I despise him and don't want him to touch a single bite of MY game. I get it. I don't even know him and already hate that guy's guts too. No, I don't hate him. Lith corrected her. Hate, just like love, is an irrational feeling, while my contempt for him has sound foundations. Wow, such profound notion for someone so young. Worthy of a hunter. Now enough chit-chat. It's time to get to work. Celia took down the squirrels, passing one to Lith. We will start with the little critters. They are smaller and better for practice, since even if you mess up is no big deal, there is not much meat in here. She placed a squirrel on a cutting board and prepared another for Lith. What I'm going to teach you stand for most rodents, but just in case, if you ever find a rabbit that still has a snow-white fur, bring it to me. It is valuable only until it starts turning brown for the spring. Even a tiny mistake can ruin the fur, lowering its value. Celia handed him the short knife again. If you want me to teach you properly, let's do things my way. Use the knife, do as I do, and follow my instructions. Lith nodded in approval. On the squirrel's back, pinch its hide and cut it near the base of the neck, so to expose at least half of it. Now use your index finger and middle finger on both hands to create an opening after you have made the cut. Use your fingers to hook up under the skin and pull one hand towards the rear and the other hand towards its head. During the process, Lith noticed that beside being disgusting, skinning a squirrel was like taking off a sticky wet glove. After that, Celia showed him how to remove the head, the legs, and the tail. I know it's a bummer, but that bushy tail is no fur, is all goddamn body hair. You can still use it to stuff things, is very warm and soft. Now comes the tricky part. When we proceed to gut anything, be careful while making incisions. If you cut open the bladder or the intestines, the meat is ruined by bile or feces. There is no saving it. This stands for all the animals, so pay attention, kid. Gutting the squirrel was bloody and gruesome, but Lith could already smell the meat at the end of the tunnel, so he barely felt any discomfort. While we wait for our morning snack, I'll show you how to scald a bird for the plucking. As the name implies, water must not be too hot or cold, just enough for you to immerse a finger without getting a burn, but unable to hold the finger in for more than a second without burning yourself. That's proper scalding temperature. Celia took a big cauldron, positioning it over a campfire she had always ready on the back of her house. It could be a messy job, so it's better to do it outside whenever is possible. The smell of the meat cooking inside was making Lith's mouth watery. He could not afford the risk of them burning. Joran, at his command, the cauldron became immediately filled with water. Lith then stuck his hand in the water, casting in fire, making it emit steam. Celia whistled again with approval. Fast and efficient. I'm starting to regret this master-apprentice stuff less and less. I now understand why that old hag of Neria called dibs on you. We should be ready to go, but first, Celia went inside briefly, returning with 2 little plates of roasted squirrel. Before she could even pass him his plate, Lith had already snatched the food, wolfing it down like there was no tomorrow. He sucked and gnawed until only bones were left. After licking every single of his fingers, he returned to his previous calm and composed demeanor. Good gods, such a gentleman. Celia's voice was oozing sarcasm. Would you like another serving? Because that seriously creeped me out, and I know a thing or two about. Her mockery fell on deaf ears. Lith's eyes could only see the second squirrel closing in. As soon as Celia pretended to offer him her share, his hands were already moving. After devouring the last squirrel, Lith noticed that Celia was frozen in place. Her mouth was open, but no words were coming out of it, the plate still near his face. He gently put the bones back into the plate. There is no need to hold the plate for me, but thanks. That was very kind of you. Supreme Magus. Chapter 15 changes. After resolving the morning snack incident, Celia prepared the working table for the remaining game. The birds you caught are called blinkers because they get scared easily and are very quick to fly away. Usually you need luck and skill to take them down from a distance. Whatever magic you performed, it made a clean kill. Aside from the broken neck, both the feathers and the body are unscathed. Lith accepted the compliment with a small bowing. It's just a matter of finesse in using air magic. Nothing special. Celia's curiosity was far from being satisfied, but she decided not to pry further. Scalding is easy and quick. You only need to throw the poultry in the cauldron for about 45 seconds. It's better to gently stir the water in the process to clean the birds from dirt and external parasites. It also helps loosening most of the feathers. Never scald too long, or the meat could start to boil. Not to mention the risk of rupturing the organs, ruining the meat. Lith took charge of the scalding process, waving his right hand to take control of the water in the cauldron, stirring it and adjusting the force of the current according to Celia's directions. Damn it, kid. You are really starting to make me regret to have never given a damn about magic or learning it. You don't know how to use magic? Lith was astonished. No, and before today, I was proud of it. I considered chore magic a simple parlor trick. Why waste my time learning how to do things with it when I get faster and better results by using my hands? Celia shrugged. Now, get the blinkers out of the water. Time to get serious. Beside the scalding and the plucking that replaced the skinning process, gutting poultry resulted really similar to his previous experience with the squirrel, except he had also to remove to crop the neck and the oil gland. Once they finished, Lith's eyes enjoyed the results. Noticing that aside from the blinker's skin being a little more porous compared to a chicken's, it was just a roast away from what he would purchase back on Earth. How do I cook it? Still hungry even after 2 squirrels? Yes, very. The previous meal was just an appetizer. He was far from satisfied. Please, let's use the outdoor campfire. I need to get used to not using a fireplace. Celia slammed her hand on her forehead. Right. I almost forgot about your family issues. After instructing him how to choose the right spot for a campfire, she showed him how to improvise a kebab with wood sticks. The final lesson was about how high to set the kebab to avoid burning the food and how to recognize when it was ready to be eaten. After memorizing everything, Lith imbued his eyes with fire magic, activating the fire vision spell that granted him an improved version of thermal goggles. He then started to weave together fire and wind magic, keeping the heat stable with no hot or cold spots, while using air currents to cook every nook and cranny of the meat evenly. Such fine control required for him to move both his hands and feet, to watch his meal from different angles and adjusting the mana flow. His movements were akin to a combination of martial arts katas. Celia was about to mock him about how performing a victory dance for a single blinker was a little extreme when the delicious smell reached her nose. The blinker was getting roasted with a speed visible to the naked eye, the skin turning into a crispy crust, releasing the fat that was masterfully spreaded evenly. The smell was so good that her stomach started grumbling, despite she had consumed her breakfast less than 2 hours ago. Lith lifted the skewer with spirit magic, and after lowering the temperature to avoid burning himself while eating, he started wolfing down the meat, ripping it apart with his bare hands. First the drumsticks, then the breast, and lastly the wings. It lacked salt, and the meat wasn't as tender as a roasted chicken since they had not let the meat undergo any maturation. Nonetheless, it was the best meal Lith had ever had. I can't believe it. I cannot feel the hunger anymore. Lith fell to his knees from the happiness, his eyes wet on the verge of shedding tears. But that moment passed quickly. I need more. I can't allow the hunger to cripple me again. Lith looked at the sun. There were still a couple of hours before noon. He had still time for more hunting. Master Celia, I need a favor. I need a place to hide my own game, the one I am not willing to share. Just call me Celia. Hunters do not waste time with honorifics. We are practical people. She waved her hand, dismissing the need for a title. As for your request, I don't make favors, only deals. What about this? From tomorrow onwards, you will come here every day and clean my house, and maybe from time to time cook something for me with that silly dance of yours. In exchange, I will keep your personal meat safe and sound, and whenever you cook for me, we will share the meal evenly. Deal. Celia offered him her hand. It was still a rip-off, but it was his only option. Deal. I have only one rule. I don't do laundry. In the next days, Lith's house resounded with much more laughter and joy than usual. Him bringing game home had raised some questions, but nothing he couldn't explain easily. The food helped everyone to relax and let go of the stress of the past. Even Lith and Orpal started to smooth over their relationship, limiting the glares and insults to a couple every day. But more importantly, Lith could finally start practicing martial arts again. His routine was very simple: hunting in the morning, magical training in the afternoon, martial arts at night. Thanks to the invigoration breathing technique, Lith was now able to stay up for almost a week before being forced to rest. He would sneak out of the house as soon his life vision spell confirmed that everyone was asleep. Once outside, he would create mud dummies with earth magic to both practice martial techniques and temper his body. His first priority was the footwork. Maybe it was because he was only 4 years old, or maybe it was the lack of activity due to the previous constant hunger, but his body was embarrassingly clumsy and lacked coordination. Whenever someone threw anything at him, even a chestnut from a meter away, 3 feet, he would either miss it entirely or dunk it on the floor. Lith knew that despite his spellcasting was very quick, especially spirit magic, it was not instant. He could not afford to become a sitting duck as soon as someone closed in too much. Learning magic was powerful but not omnipotent. What good could possibly do to him being able to topple mountains only to get killed by a random thug that managed to sneak up on him? Even back on Earth, Lith had always thought that considering mind and body as separate entities was dumb. Exercise had always allowed him to relieve his stress and relax his mind. Exactly like studying always allowed him to perform at his best, be it at work or martial arts. Brute strength was just violence, pure intellect just ideas with no substance. Only when mind and body were trained together, the body could perform as the mind required. About a week after Lith had begun training, something happened. He was alone at night, practicing footwork by circling around the dummies, when he felt that something was wrong. Pain burst from his mana core and quickly spreaded to his whole body, accompanied by a head-spinning nausea like he had never experienced before. "What's happening to me?" he screamed inwardly. This can't be a bottleneck. The last one resolved just yesterday, and no bottleneck ever felt like this. Soon he started gasping for air, incapable to stand up anymore and writhing in pain. "I can't die. I don't want to die again. Not after enduring so much. I refuse to become some slave in a distant galaxy or an old man waiting for death. I had enough. I refuse to die." He used all his willpower to convert every iota of his mana into light magic, fighting off the affliction that was tormenting him, but to no avail. The pain got worse and worse, his power incapable of keeping up. When he surrendered, the burning sensation was finally free to rise all the way up to his mouth. Then he started puking lumps of a black, sticky substance that looked like tar, but smelled like something had died and rotted for weeks under the summer heat. They were the size of a nut, but the strain he felt was akin to have barfed 2 elephants walking side by side. The stench was so bad that even in his incapacitated state, he found the strength to summon some dark magic to destroy them without leaving traces. Lith spent the next minutes spitting, drinking, even eating grass to get rid of that revolting taste in his mouth. When everything returned normal, Lith was too exhausted to practice, so he had to use invigoration to return his body to peak condition. As soon as Lith started executing the breathing technique, he discovered that he was now able to sense his mana core with much greater clarity. While absorbing the world energy with invigoration, he could feel and manipulate the mana flowing through his blood vessels and his organs to the point of visualize even the residual magic in his hair. Despite his eyes being closed shut, Lith could see inside his body as he was observing a state-of-the-art full-body scan 3D. Still dizzy, he tried performing the footwork exercise again. Lith's movements were still far from perfect, but he no longer felt like having two left feet. It's an amazing improvement considering that until a minute ago my goal was stop tripping on my own feet. I wonder. Lith stretched forward, his right hand opened, applying spirit magic to the head of the dummies. The best I could do before, with so many targets at once, was to squeeze them a little. And now, he clenched his fist faster and harder than ever before. The dummies' heads popped like balloons. Supreme Magus. Chapter 16 Encounters. During the following days, Lith made several discoveries about the changes he had undergone. His body felt lighter than ever, all his physical abilities augmented, all his senses sharper and heightened compared to before. There had also been cosmetic changes in his appearance. The moles on his body had visibly shrank, his skin was smoother than after a spa treatment back on Earth, and most of the freckles around his nose and eyes had disappeared. Lith took note of all these changes, trying to understand what had happened, but he could not care less about beautifying effects. Even with no moles and freckles at all, he would still look like a crude hillbilly. If his mother had passed anything to him, he was unable to notice. Unlike his sisters, Lith had nothing of her beauty or grace. Alina moved like a ballerina, while he was rough and clumsy enough to feel like a caveman. Lith had deep-set eyes like his father, a high forehead, and a nose a little too big to be proportionate to his visage. He wasn't ugly, but not even cute. The best he could give himself was a solid 6 out of 10. Lith's only hope for improvement was the teenage growth spurt, to get rid of his thin and scrawny build. Figuring out the changes in the mana core required even more time. Lith understood that his mana had undergone a qualitative change, becoming purer and denser. This allowed him to cast stronger spells, also reducing the time he needed to manipulate elemental and spirit magic, resulting in faster casting speed. Through Invigorate, he could now spot the presence of that tar-like material scattered all around his body, in his organs, blood vessels, and even in the neural pathway. Whenever he used the accumulation technique, he could feel the smaller tar-like particles being pulled toward the mana core, while the bigger ones would fragment over time, shrinking in size before actually moving. Confident in his new strength, Lith started getting deeper in the woods, hunting for bigger preys. He was no longer afraid of predators. Instead of avoiding them, he started looking out for them. Lith wanted for his family to have enough fur to make a set of warm clothes for everyone. He was sick of being forced to wear so many layers of clothes during winter that he was unable to walk properly, swinging every step like a penguin. The problem was that Lith still moved through the forest making a lot of noise, exuding enough killing intent to scare away anything that wasn't stupid or desperate enough to stand in his way. It was only thanks to the life vision spell combined with spirit magic that he was still capable of hunting. The spirit magic range had expanded to over 30 meters, 32.8 yards, range, so he could easily kill any animal that tried to escape by climbing trees or by taking flight. When Lith wasn't able to catch anything, he would shoot down any bird that made the mistake of flying within his scope. One day, Lith was exploring a new area of the Tron Woods, hoping to find a fur-wearing meal, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While looking at a small mound, his life vision spotted 3 life forces hiding a few meters underground. They were not strong enough to be predators, but they were big enough to be a perfect lunch. If those are rodents or other smart animals, there could be more than one exit. I have no time to waste. I'll force them out. After getting on the highest spot of the mound, always keeping both eyes on the prize, he used earth magic. Magna! The ground around him started to shake, making the burrow and the small tunnels collapse. The creatures started panicking, taking the most direct route out. Lith started running, following their underground movements as close as possible, not letting them get out of the spirit magic range. From a well-hidden hole near a bush came out 3 big fat rabbits, 2 of them still wearing a snow-white fur. "Lucky!" Lith screamed while snapping his fingers, forcing the rabbit's neck to a 180 degrees turn. "I'll keep the brown-white one for myself, while I'll trade the other 2 pelts with Celia for some fur of lesser quality, but much more quantity. Today is really my lucky day." Lith was so used being alone in the woods to always think out loud, to break the feeling of isolation. He hung the rabbits to his belt by the ears and started walking towards Celia's house. After a few steps, Lith heard an odd sound closing in. He had never heard it before, so he started looking around for its source. Soon he could see 2 horses in the distance, galloping in his direction. F***CK. It seems I've been too loud. Fight or flight? To answer his own question, he activated life vision again. The horses were just horses, while the men were far from impressive. The one taking point was barely as strong as Celia, while the one behind was even weaker than Raz, Lith's father. Lith forced himself, hiding a cruel smile. Well, my first encounter with complete strangers in this new world. Are they good people? I bet that humans are humans everywhere. This would mean that they are holes. I can't wait to find out. Lith stood there, waiting for them to arrive. The first man was clearly a servant, dressed in a hunter suit made of leather of low quality, with a crest on both his chest and shoulders. He was an unshaven middle-aged man, with pitch-black short hair, mean and angry eyes sitting on a face worthy of a mugshot. The one behind him was dressed with a suit of much better quality, probably brand new. He wore the same crest on his chest, but this one seemed to be made of silk and gold embroidered. He was a kid, maybe 16 years old, with a handsome face and the build of a swimsuit model. The tight-fitting leather emphasized his muscular body, moving in tune with his horse. Lith felt really pissed off, and he knew exactly why. I really hope he is as much of a D***CK as he is handsome. Otherwise, not only I will be forced to start to believe in Prince Charming, but I will also die of envy. Hey kid, the servant had a rude tone of voice. What was that noise from before? Lith put on his best innocent expression, playing wolf in sheep clothes. Good day, sir. It was just me hunting. I'm sorry if I scared you. Lith's voice sounded genuinely apologetic. He wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Where did you get those? He said, ignoring Lith's apologies and pointing at the rabbits. From a rabbit hole. They're my game. Lith smiled, keeping watch on both of them. Give them to us now. They will make a perfect muff for my mother. The handsome youth had also a beautiful voice. If you are really sorry, you should offer us proper compensation. Even a commoner like you should know the basics of decency. He said with a mocking smile. Lith dropped the act like a live grenade. Seriously? Robbing a kid in broad daylight? Don't you have any shame? Kid, the servant rebuked. Do you know who are you talking to? He is the son of Baron Wrath, lord of these lands. Lith started laughing out loud. Please. Tron Woods has no owner, except maybe Count Lark. Stop spewing bulls asterisk. It's just to cover your sorry, asterisk guess. And besides, do you know whom are you talking to? I am a Supreme Mage. See what happens when you waste your breath on commoners, Korth? The young noble took up the short bow he carried on his back, knocking an arrow. They are just too stupid. It's in the nature of things. He shot the arrow with perfect aim towards Lith's heart. But Lith was far enough, and had kept many spells ready on his fingertips. With a wave of his hand, a strong gust of wind hit the arrow on the side, making it spin out of control before harmlessly hitting the ground meters away from its intended target. Despite being flabbergasted, the young noble was able to keep his cool, knocking another arrow while ordering Korth to kill the kid. Lith raised his left hand, freezing Korth in place with spirit magic, while with the right, he took control of the arrow that slipped away from the youth's fingers before stabbing him in the eye. The youth fell from his horse, screaming in pain. To think that I even bothered giving you guys a chance to get out of here alive. Lith sighed, shaking his head. Wait, if you kill the young lord, you and whoever you love will die. Think about it. Lith started laughing again. Really? And how could they ever find out what happened here? Lith moved his left thumb, and Korth noticed with horror that his right hand was moving against his will, unsheathing the hunting knife he carried at his belt. Wait, please. Have mercy. Don't do this. You are just a kid. He begged. So, when you want to kill, you kill. But when you lose, I am supposed to show mercy. The spite in his voice was palpable. Lith lowered his ring finger, bringing the knife at Korth's throat. Since you're just a servant, I'll give you a clean death. With a flicker of the little finger, Lith forced Korth to cut his throat from ear to ear. Then he approached the young noble that was still writhing in pain, uncaring of what just happened to his loyal servant. As for you, you're the kind of guy I hate the most. With one hand, Lith kept him frozen at mid-air, while he used the other to punch him nonstop. You have F***ing everything. Money, beauty, a bright future, and all you could do with such treasures is screw those who are already struggling to survive. Lith hated humans more than everything. Even back on Earth, the only thing keeping his rage in check was his responsibilities towards his family. But in the new world, there was no cameras, no GPS, nothing. There was only power, and for once he was the one holding it. You know, I have a very ill sister, Lith said after venting out. I could never practice darkness magic on living beings, because using it on animals is just plain cruel. You, on the other side, are just a monster with the face of a man. You will make a perfect specimen for my research. Tron Woods resounded with screams for hours before death could come to claim her prize. Supreme Magus. Chapter 17 Encounters 2. While Lith was approaching Celia's house, he felt a profound sense of shame tormenting him. It's a shame to waste so much good equipment and horse meat, but I have no plausible excuse for it. Our farm could really use a couple of horses, but what if someone recognized them? Too many risks for so little reward. Destroying everything was the right thing to do. Once he had finished with his experiments, Lith used darkness magic to wipe out any trace or proof of what happened, turning everything into dust. Celia was so excited seeing the two rabbits to let slip her dire need for them, to fill the order of a very generous client. Respecting his master's teachings, Lith exploited the situation. Hunters don't do favors, they make deals. He quoted, in exchange for the snow-white rabbits, Lith managed to get a full set of warm clothes of lower quality, and Celia would personally tan the remaining pelt for free. That and the 3 rabbits ready for the cooking earned him great praise from his family, except Orpal. Over time, he had started to consider all the food that Lith brought home for granted, so his hatred and envy returned stronger than ever. That little leech. Hunting with magic is easy. Any idiot could do it. Everything he does is a slap in my face. I never get the respect that I deserve as the firstborn, and it's all his fault. First, he flaunts his luck hunting. Then he plays martyr, asking mother and father to let that piece of trash of Tista be the first to have fur clothes. What can Tista possibly do with them? Getting ill with style? No, Lith did it on purpose. He knows that my stupid parents still resent me for telling the truth about that cripple. Lith did it only to make me lose face compared to him. The truth was quite different from Orpal's self-centered interpretation. Lith really loved Alina, mother, Rena, big sister, and Tista, little sister, while Orpal was never on his mind. He cured anyone in the family without being asked to, except for Orpal, but not out of spite or anger, but simply because his existence was irrelevant in Lith's eyes. If Orpal lived or died, it was not his problem. He would not do anything to harm him, but would not help him either. For Lith, they were complete strangers living in the same home. The reason why he had wanted Tista to be the first to benefit from his luck was that Lith hoped that with warm enough clothes his sister could finally spend more time with him and Rena during winter, playing in the snow. In Lith's eyes, the image of Carl would often overlap on Tista's visage. He loved them deeply, and both of them were victims of a cruel fate. Lith wasn't willing to let anyone or anything, not even a congenital condition, take his loved ones away from him. He suffered at the thought of how little of life she could enjoy. To give Tista the opportunity to experience speed and the feeling of the wind on her face, Lith built for her a swing with the help of their father, Raz. It was nothing special, just a wooden plank attached to 4 tight ropes hanging from a reversed U-shaped wooden framework with triangular standings. Yet the result was awe-inspiring for his family. Swings seemed to be unknown in the New World, or at least they were in the Lustria County. Raz looked at the result of their work in admiration. It's amazing. Why the 3 wooden beams instead of just 1? Safety reasons. Lith explained while using earth magic to make the last 10 centimeters, 3.9 inches, of the beams sink underground, making the swing impossible to topple by bad weather or a too vigorous movement. That way both ends are like a chair. Multiple legs mean that the weight is equally distributed among multiple beams, making the stress per beam significantly inferior. Of course, now that you explained it is so simple. By the way, how do we call this thing? Lith was at loss for words. He had no idea what the word for the swing movement was, and he could not ask that now. Air. It's a rocking chair. Damn it. Why I always screw up with the little details. That's not a rocking chair, but it's the closest thing I could think about with my current vocabulary. Tista fell in love with his present, and the rocking chair became soon a popular pastime in the family, to the point that Raz had to build a couple more to avoid quarrels. Furthermore, after his experiments with dark magic, Lith spent the following months trying to apply both life vision and invigoration while treating Tista's symptoms. If I can manage to have, for Tista's body, the same imaging that invigoration grants me for my own body, I could have a better understanding of her underlying condition. That would mean having much better chances of finding a cure. In the blink of an eye, it was almost winter again. Lith's 5th birthday was approaching. Lith was determined to capitalize on every single day before the great cold arrived, to catch as much game he could to fill the house's storeroom to the brim. He had no idea how cold the incoming winter would be, and even if he was probably strong enough to survive a storm, he doubted his parents would allow him to test his theory. During the last year, Lith had explored more and more of the Tron woods, learning how to move without alarming the animals. He had also discovered new uses for dark magic. His newest spell, the Shroud, allowed him to cancel out his body's smell and aura by enveloping Lith in thin layer of dark energy, making it impossible for most animals to notice him, either by nose or instinct. But it wasn't an easy task. Even a small misstep would turn the Shroud into full-blown killing intent, making the whole woods aware of his presence. That day, Lith was raiding a new area deep in the Tron woods, investigating an odd feeling that had tormented him for days. In certain areas of the woods, Lith could hear an annoying buzzing sound, and until that day, he had always ignored it. Lith had always thought that it was the call of some weird, unknown animal, but in the last days the noise had gotten stronger and persistent. Damn, whatever this is, it reminds me of my desktop's uninterruptible power supply unit whenever there was a blackout. It's ear-piercing. Lith could not help but to imagine it as a desperate cry for help. He did not understand how he got that idea, but his gut was telling him that it was something important. Ever since Lith had learned martial arts back on Earth, he had always followed his gut feelings when he had nothing to lose, and this was definitely the case. The closer he got, the louder the noise. Lith knew he was on the right path. He was running at full speed when he heard a bone-chilling howl. Lith immediately used 2 of his life-saving spells, Shroud to conceal himself, and the air spell Light's Feet to float a few centimeters above the ground, making his movements noiseless. Both required a lot of concentration, but it was better to spend some mana rather than stupidly endangering himself. Calm and focused, he searched for the source of all that noise. Holy sh**t. That's a re. Lith exclaimed inwardly after quickly hiding behind a huge tree. Ari was a magical wolf beast, the apex predator of the Tron woods. Magical beasts were more common and weaker than monsters, but they could still easily take apart a fully armed soldier. Not many animals could turn into a magical beast. They needed a great talent for magic and enough time to feed off the world energy. Once an animal became a magical beast, it could use its mana to boost its physical prowess, and even developing spells that employed elements they were attuned with. The Ree was almost as big as horse, with a fire-colored thick fur. Lith could not understand why a Ree would come so close to a human settling. Rees were intelligent beasts that avoided unnecessary trouble. If humans did not disturb them, they would return the favor. Lith felt pity for its prey. After making sure of being upwind, he canceled both spells to save precious mana, getting a better understanding of the situation. The Ree kept howling and growling as it was in pain. Lith noticed that every time the Ree's snout got close to the ground, the buzzing sound would become high-pitched and a magical wolf would whine in pain. Now more curious than afraid, Lith activated Life Vision to estimate the Ree's power. What he saw made him gasp loudly. The Ree was unbelievably strong, with a mana flow almost on par with Lith's. But the real reason for amazement was a second mana flow that belonged to the source of the buzzing sound. It was a little stone, smaller than a thimble. What the F***CK? That pebble is alive? That explains everything. The noise it emitted must have lured here the Ree, just like it did for me. Taking into account its reactions, the noise is much more annoying for the Ree than for me. I never heard of rocks with mana flow. That thing must be a magical item. I cannot let that brute destroy it. Throwing caution to the wind, Lith decided to take action and save the magic stone. The Ree's life force is incomparable to mine, but if I manage to avoid it getting close, I know I can win. His mana flow is inferior to mine, and from what Celia told me, magic beasts have no offensive spells. First, Lith activated Shroud again. Then he started weaving his strongest spell, Plague Arrow. A bolt of dark energy flew from his joined hands, hitting the Ree from its blind spot while it was trying again to crack the noisy stone with its teeth. The screeching sound and the spell hit both at the same time, making the magical beast almost lose its footing. Plague Arrow was a spell that injected a dense mass of darkness magic in the victim, disrupting both the mana flow and the life force. Lith had charged it as much as he could, to get as much advantage as he could. Before the Ree could turn around to search for its enemy, a stream of lightnings erupted from Lith's palms, hitting the magical beast with enough strength to knock it down. While increasing the distance between them, Lith canceled Shroud for Life Vision. Despite the sneak attacks, the Ree was still alive and strong. Lith focused his spirit magic, using both his hands, trying to break its neck as he had already done countless times. The Ree wasn't stupid. As soon as it felt the ominous sensation on his neck, it contracted its muscles, reinforcing it with mana and making it harder than steel. F***CK. So much for my advantage. If only I could use fire magic, you would be already roasted to death. Could you please go away? That thing is mine. Mine. Lith conjured several ice javelins, throwing them at the magical beast from multiple angles simultaneously. The Ree easily dodged them all, retaliating with a powerful magical roar. Lith was only saved by the distance, having the time to realize that a massive wind blast was heading his way. He stepped back at the moment of the impact, using his own wind magic to dissipate the blast. His sleeves got turned into confetti, but aside from some flesh wounds, he was fine. F***CK me sideways. Thanks a lot, Celia. Magical beasts do not have offensive spells, sure. It seems this Ree never got the memo, though. The Ree charged at Lith, using its wind blast to disrupt his rhythm. Lith did his best to keep the beast at bay, but the difference in physical prowess was overwhelming. It was only a matter of time before getting caught. Okay, when you can't win, just run. Plan B, fight dirty. Lith stopped running away to prepare his last attack plan before throwing the towel. He conjured many ice javelins, but did not throw them. He left them floating in midair all around him. After a moment of hesitation, the Ree chose to ignore them, charging straight at that insolent pest. That's a good boy. Eat this. Twin spell. Lith's right hand produced a massive flash of light. For a moment, it was like a second sun had appeared. His left hand, instead, used wind magic to produce a noise comparable to an explosion. The Ree tumbled from the pain, its eyes and ears bleeding, while Lith was unscathed. He had learned long ago that as long as it was infused with his mana, his own spells would do him no harm. He could cover himself in fire, ice, or lightning without a scratch. When the Ree crashed against a tree, Lith finally used the javelins, throwing them with all the force he had. All of them hit the target, but the thick magical fur prevented them from impaling it, piercing only through a few centimeters of flesh. Lith immediately checked with life vision, the results appalling. The Ree was definitely wounded and weakened, but far from being dead. Damn it, so much effort for so little damage. If it continues like this, I am the one who is most likely to run out of steam or luck. The Ree only needs one hit to kill me. It's not worth the risk. Lith used spirit magic to recover the magic stone before running for his life. The stone was full of teeth marks. Its sharp surface prickled Lith's skin. "So long, sucker!" Lith screamed at the still stunned magical beast. "See you again in a few years. Let's see if you dare attack me again." Small drops of blood touched the stone, and the noise stopped. The Ree was still trying to make head or tails of what had just happened. It only wanted the damn noise to stop hurting his ears when that fierce man-pup showed up. The Ree had tried to scare him away and to teach him a lesson, but it ended to be the one getting schooled instead. Bah, who cares? The Ree thought. I wanted to get rid of that stupid rock, and in one way or another I got the job done. That was one feisty pup, though. I pray that he shows more consideration towards his pack than he did for me. Otherwise, when he grows up, he will be a scourge to his kin. Stupid humans and their greed bring only troubles. They are incapable even of taking care of their own. The Ree, leader of all the packs in the Tron Woods, shrugged away the javelins before returning to its family. Supreme Magus. Chapter 18. New Solutions, New Problems. Lith kept running until he was out of the woods, turning his head from time to check with life vision as he was being followed. There's no trace of the Ree, but better safe than sorry. I'm afraid I have pissed off that thing quite bad. It's better to give it some time to vent off and search for easier praise. He was near Celia's house when he finally remembered about the magical stone. Lith activated life vision, getting a good look up close. The first thing he noticed was that the rough edges on the stone had smoothened up. It did not prick his skin anymore. The surface was still rough, but now looked like a stone marble. The buzzing sound had stopped from a while, and the magical stone's life force, despite being still at the same level, had changed significantly. Back when he saw it for the first time, its life force was like a candle about to burn out of wax. Now it had become steady, with a regular pulse. Warning Celia about the magical beast took priority, so he hid the stone in a leather pouch he always carried at his neck before knocking at her door. Lith explained her everything, describing in detail the size and power of the Ree, leaving her flabbergasted. Of course, he never mentioned their fight. Lith told her that he had fled as soon as their eyes met, and that he got away only thanks to his magic, showing his tattered sleeves as proof. Good gods, kid. She still refused to call him by his name. You have been really lucky it took it easy on you. Had the Ree decided to give you chase, we would not be having this conversation. Nonetheless, thanks for warning me first, instead of going to your parents. Celia ruffled his hair. How do you know I came here first? Because if you didn't, your parents would have probably locked you up in your house, and one of them would have come here to warn me in your place. Lith froze up. He had just dodged a bullet much scarier than any Ree. You are right. It's better not to tell them. Otherwise my hunting days may be over forever. Yeah, I suggest you taking the rest of the morning off. Make up an excuse for those sleeves and go home. Celia walked over the shed near her house where she kept her game maturating. Take these as a thank you for the heads up. She handed him a rabbit and a blinker ready to be cooked. I was about to go in the woods. I think I will follow my advice instead and keep tanning the remaining pelts. I'll go to hunting in the afternoon when it should be safer. Lith thanked her with a deep bow. He knew how precious meat was in Lucia, even for a huntress as good as Celia. Not to mention she had just saved him from perpetual house arrests. He spent the rest of the morning trying to understand how to use the magic stone. It appeared to be feeding off Lith's mana, not leeching it like a parasite, more like nibbling at the mana that he naturally released being talented in magic. The stone would simply breath in what Lith's body breathed out, nothing more. Lith tried injecting mana into it, but to no avail. Then he casted elemental spells while holding the stone, to check if their strength, cast speed, and area of effect were affected in any way. All of his experiments gave no results. The stone looked just like any other. Stones do not have such a clear mana flow, and certainly they do not have any life force. Maybe this thing needs time to heal, to recharge, or something. The re messed it up quite bad. Let's hope is not broken. Unless it starts harming me, I'll keep it. Maybe it's some kind of treasure, or maybe I can find something about it on Nana's books. I just have to be patient. The last days of autumn passed on uneventful until winter arrived. Having reached the 5 years of age, Lith revealed a little more of his magic talents, proving to be invaluable to his family. He would wake up first and warm up the whole house with magic, even the floors. At that point, the fireplace was lit only because it was cozy and because rounding up around the fire, especially during the stormy winter evenings, was a family tradition. Even the cooking was entrusted to Lith. Alina would prepare the meal, and Lith would cook it faster and better than a ventilated oven, keeping the soup warm for everyone during the whole meal. He could not go hunting anymore because of the bad weather. His parents had been adamant on that. But Lith could still go to Celia's house to perform the chores for her. During the last year, she had become so lazy to become dependent on Lith for keeping her house clean and her tools sterilized. This meant killing 2 birds with 1 stone for Lith. Now, he had an excuse to go fetch his private stock of meat whenever he got hungry, and Celia had to pay him for the chores. Lith would do it for free, just to get out of the house, but his parents would not agree. So, Celia paid him a few copper coins to clean her house, and some more for Alina to do her laundry. Both Alina and Raz would welcome any extra income, and doing the laundry for 8 instead of 7 wasn't much an effort, especially since Lith provided her an endless supply of hot water. "Nice to meet you. I am Lith, Boiler Supreme." He would grumble inwardly every time. In the first weeks of winter, Lith made a very important breakthrough. He finally understood how to use Invigoration's body imaging on others. He was now able to let his mana seep into another person's body and slowly take control of their mana flow, allowing Lith to know everything about the subject's physical condition. The only way to achieve such a result was to keep physical contact, searching way-ins for the mana without harming him or her. Lith immediately used it on Tista, and his findings were appalling. Her body was full of the tar-like substance that, for the lack of a better term, he had dubbed impurities, and the cause of that was her lungs. Barely half of Tista's lungs were made up by a healthy tissue. The rest appeared like a black-brown mass that actively produced impurities that over time filled the healthy tissues of her lungs and windpipe, making her cough first and ill later. After giving it some thought, Lith was sure to have found a fix better than everything he had done before, but much more embarrassing. Even though now his real age was that of a 30-year-old man, he was still in a 5-year-old body, which found extremely uncomfortable the idea of speaking of certain matters, especially with the family women. After some deep breaths to calm down, he called Raz and Alina to ask for their help and permission. He had to dumb down the procedure quite a lot to get them to understand. "Basically, I cannot cure Tista, not yet, but I discovered a way that should make her feel much better. In the best-case scenario, she could even get rid of most of her symptoms. And in the worst-case scenario," Raz asked, full of worries, "at worst, she will be the same. That's I'm certain of it. But I need you to trust me." Contrary to his expectations, they did not make any objections or question. Their trust in Lith's mastery of magic was boundless, and in their eyes, he was just a 5-year-old, while Tista was barely 7. She had yet to mature in every way. For them, it was like yesterday when they bathed together in the wash tub. The first phase was the easiest. Lith would take control of Tista's mana flow, overloading her body with his mana, and forcing the impurities to move away from the inner organs and toward the skin. She would just feel hot the whole time, like having a mild fever. Once most of the impurities were about to surface, Lith demanded to be blindfolded and that either Alina or Rena witness the process. Tista was just a kid, and Lith feared that over time suspicions might arise. During Earth's Middle Ages, incestuous relationships were disgustingly common, and he rejected even the idea of being thought of as a pervert. The second and last phase required Tista to be soaking in a wash tub that had been previously filled by Lith with hot water and soap. He clearly remembered the stench the impurities gave off, and during winter, ventilating the house was difficult, especially in Tista's condition. Cold was her worst enemy. Then, he could finally extract the impurities by using modern magic, creating and manipulating flows that would massage Tista all over her body. Lith would destroy the impurities as soon as possible with dark magic, preventing them to release their smell. It was a difficult process that required using water and darkness magic, all while keeping invigoration active. After the treatment, he would also use water magic to remove all the water still on her body, and then mix fire and wind magic to obtain a makeshift hairdryer. When it was finally over, Tista looked like she was just back from a spa, while Lith looked like he had just got back from mining, drenched in sweat and out of breath. "How do you feel?" Tista made some deep breaths. "I never felt so good. Like ever. Also, I always dreamt of having a winter bath, instead of having to resort to warm water-soaked towels. Thanks, lil' bro. You just made 2 of my wishes come true." She tried to hug him, but he raised his arms in defense. "Please, no. I'm disgusting right now. Do not ruin my hard work. I now need a bath, some food, and 2 hours rest minimum." Both his mother and big sister nodded. "Lith, dear, what was that thing with the water that you did?" Alina asked. Do you mean the... Damn it, I can't tell her I was imitating a hydromassage. They do not have Latin here. Or I can call it a jacuzzi or something. Whatever. I'm too tired for this sh*t. Water massage? Yes, that. It seems so relaxing. Tista has fallen asleep many times during her treatment. Sure, it must be pleasant. Rena's words were filled with expectation. And that thing for drying her hair, could you do that again, too? Alina raised the ante, their aim more and more obvious by the second. Lith was on the verge of collapsing. He had no time to spare with niceties. Are you implying that you would like a hot water massage, too? More nodding followed. Their hands joined in a silent plea. But, Lith stuttered. Both of you are. He was trying to find a polite way to say hot. Lith could still remember Alina's naked body when he was still an infant, and she had aged very well. Rena was now 11. Maybe it was the countryside lifestyle, maybe it was related to the new world, but she had already begun her growth spurt, developing some curves, being nice and soft in all the right places. Lith already had so many qualms for his little sister, and Tista was as flat as a board. Only her long hairs gave her away as a girl instead of a boy. We are family, and all of us have dreamt of being able to take a bath during winter without catching a cold or worse. You have no idea how smelly we become by working in the barn, surrounded by the livestock smell and their dung. Sometimes the smell is so bad we can't even sleep at night. Couldn't you help us too?" Alina, his mother, completely oblivious of Lith's worries, tried to play the guilt card. Lith gave up. "Fine, just let me rest a bit and then I'll help you. But you still need to blindfold me, and I demand a witness." They both started laughing out loud. "Why so many qualms? You're just a baby, not some thug. I would like to say that I am a gentleman, but I do not know the word for it. I could say that I am a man, but that would make them laugh even harder. Stupid 5-year-old body," he thought. Decorum. It was the only word in his vocabulary he could resort to. Damn, this is going to be a freaking long winter. Supreme Magus. Chapter 19 Conflicts. As Lith predicted, his 5th winter revealed to be quite interesting. Treating Tista's condition required 2 sessions per week minimum, each one lasting around 4 hours. 2 for the treatment itself, and the remaining time for him to bathe and recover his strength. Manipulating Tista's mana flow while simultaneously using fire, water, and dark magic took its toll every time. The good news was that with so much practice, he was becoming accustomed to casting and maintaining several spells active at once. Every treatment was easier than the previous one, and her symptoms were quickly improving. Tista was now able to help with the house chores and the livestock. She could even afford making long walks outside when the weather was good. The bad news was that Lith's relationship with his brothers was now uglier than ever before. Every time Tista got better, someone would reproach Orpal for his past words, and if no one did, then Tista would. Orpal's fits of rage had really hurt her. His cruel words had shattered the image she always had of her perfect family, of her caring big brother. Tista had been humiliated and betrayed, and she was not going to forget that easily. Also, soon after hot winter baths had become available, Raz too started to bathe often. Orpal and Tryon were the only ones left out. Orpal because he could not stand the thought of having to ask something from Lith, especially if he had to do it politely. I'm the eldest brother. I'm not supposed to beg runts for favors. I'm supposed to give orders and be respected for it. That leech now has turned even the cripple against me, and I can't put Tista in her place. Otherwise, she will make me look like I'm the bad guy who picks on a sick little girl. Manipulative, B***TCH. Tryon was between a rock and a hard place. He deeply loved Tista, but he also loved and respected Orpal. Tryon was the only one by his side, so he had not the heart to betray their bond. With everyone else fresh and clean, their smell stuck out like a sore thumb. Even with all their family goodwill, disgusted grimaces were impossible to avoid from time to time. The first time Tista dubbed the duo as Orpup and Tirik, she brought down the house with laughter. Orpal and Tryon blamed Lith for their humiliation, but he just ignored them like he always did. Raz made for Lith a pair of snowshoes, spending more and more time with him. Raz also started imparting him lessons about how to operate a farm and teaching how to whittle. Lith was still very young, but knowing he was able to skin and gut his game, Raz thought there was no risk for him in handling a carving knife. Orpal and Tryon lived the situation differently, though. Until then, Lith had spent most of his time with the girls, letting Raz spend all his free time with the boys. They felt wronged twice. Once because Lith was robbing them of their dad time. The second because he always refused teaching them whittling before they reached the age of 8. Things got even more unpleasant for Lith after midwinter. Every time he would treat Tista, he could notice that something was off. Both his mother and sister had an odd look in their eyes. Often, they would open their mouth, only to close them right away, giving him the silent treatment for hours. Lith couldn't figure out the reason of this behavior, so his mind started spinning like crazy. Do they believe me a pervert? Have I looked at them in an inappropriate way? Maybe they're starting to suspect something. Maybe they know I am from a different world. Lith's full-blown paranoia wouldn't give him a second of rest, preventing him to have a good night of sleep. He heard them sighing too often. Something was definitely off. It took Lith all his courage to muster the strength to face them and ask for the truth. The confrontation took place in the girls' room, where they were all gathered for Tista's treatment. Lith, did you really not notice any changes? Alina asked, pouting. Yes, I did. Tista is feeling much better now, right? Of course there's that. But don't you notice anything here? She waved her hand, going from Tista's head to toes. That's my sister. And, she prompted, her health is getting better. Nothing is getting worse. Tista is still Tista. For the first time in his 3 lives, Lith could spectate with his own eyes a synchronized facepalm outside internet meme gifs. Rena was fuming. Really? Don't you notice that her hair is soft and silky? That it never tangles or gets split ends? Tista had light brown hair with shades of purple all over them. Ever since the treatment began, the color had got more vibrant and visible. Shades of purple, this is really another world after all. I wonder why women do have them and men do not. Lith thought. Now that you mention it, yes I do. But normally I don't care for hair. I keep mine short for a reason. Rena shook her head. Don't you even notice that her skin has got smoother, with no imperfections? That she is growing taller and slender than her peers? Lith kept scratching his head. He knew nothing about the average girl. Also, they were simply describing the side effects of removing impurities. And why is that a problem? Aren't those all good things? This time even Tista joined the facepalm. They're envious of those things, dummy. They just want you to do the same for them. Lith was flabbergasted by such trivial demands. All those grimaces, the silent treatment, all of it for such a stupid reason. Lith, dear, being attractive for a girl is a pretty big deal. For your sisters could mean getting the possibility to choose between just a wealthy man and a good, wealthy man. It can affect their entire life, their happiness. That sounded right to Lith's ears. How could I have not thought of that? While for your poor mother, it means that she can finally make all those pompous, high and mighty neighbors of her that keep bragging about having so much more money than her, flaunting all the pricey beauty creams they can afford, kicking themselves out of envy. That sounded right to Lith's ears, too. He accepted with a sigh, and his life finally returned to normal. He had to spend at least 3 afternoons a week for all the treatments, but it was worth it. All that practice made his mana core grow steady and fast. His control of mana and cast speed improved by leap and bounds. Right before the end of winter, he was forced to take in a new customer. With the weather improving, the neighboring families started meeting often. Sometimes for a visit, more often they would simply bump into each other while trading goods at the village. And that was driving Raz crazy. "Lith, you have to help me." His plea was desperate. "Your mother looks at least 10 years younger, and I'm starting to look more like her father rather than her husband. People keep murmuring how she was unfortunate marrying me, that she could have got so much better. Please do your thing on me, too." Lith had heard the rumors. They were mean and petty and deserved to be faced head-on. He would not allow anyone to speak ill of his dad. "Fine, but only at some conditions the same I asked from Mom. 1, secrecy. Nobody must ever know outside you and me. Think of all the bad people that could want to exploit me." Raz nodded. "Second, you'll never talk about it with Orpal or Tryon, nor ask me to do it for them. I don't care if they fall on love or want to marry. They made pretty clear what they feel toward me in Tista. I will not endanger my safety for them. Take it or leave it." Raz wanted to object, remind Lith that they were family too. But their behavior had only gotten worse after being forced to spend so much time together during winter. Raz had to scold them multiple times just to make them behave properly. "I can only hope that when they grow up, my sons will be able to mend their relationship. I can't force them to get along." And so he accepted. A few weeks later, Lith was headed to Celia's house for the usual cleaning before going hunting. The dawn's light made the world around him look like out of fairy tale. The thin layer of snow was immaculate, reflecting the orange light over the weeds and trees along the way. His surroundings were completely silent, the world still and at peace. At the next clearing, Lith took out the magic stone out of his pouch, observing it in the morning light. During the winter months, the magic stone had mended most of the teeth marks. Both its life force and mana flow had tremendously improved, but it was still useless as the day Lith found it. "Just my luck." He sighed. "I risked my life facing that for nothing. Let's hope I can find something in Nana's books. Otherwise, my only option is to find someone willing to buy it." Lith was really impatient to start his apprenticeship. It meant being finally able to study magic from books instead as a self-taught. Also, as an apprentice healer, he would get practice magic and be paid for it, gaining the village recognition and respect. So many birds with just one stone. After putting the magic stone back into the pouch, Lith arrived at his destination and opened the door. That day, Celia was out of town to sell her merchandise, so she had left the door open for him. It didn't take him much time to clean everything and leave. As soon as he walked out the house, he got hit in the head by a wooden stick. Lith's eyes went blurry. He felt someone pushing him back inside, making him fall to the ground with a kick in the stomach. "Look who's here, the little leech." Lith recognized that voice. He was one of Orpal's friends. 4 boys quickly surrounded Lith, kicking him while he was still down, while a 5th closed the door after checking that no one did notice them. "You little arrogant piece of sh*t. Orpal told us all about you. How you humiliate him every day. How you even dare stealing his food." "Yeah," another one yelled. "He is your big brother. It should be him getting the best part of the game, not you, little ungrateful runt." Less yelling and more kicking, Trant. Remember Orpal's words. If Leech gets the chance to use his magic, we are finished. Despite Lith was curling up, desperately trying to shield his head and stomach, another kick grazed his face, making one of his baby teeth fall. "I know what to do." Trant moved forward, gripping Lith's hands with enough strength to crush them. "Let's see how he does magic without hands." By coming that close, Trant had forced his friends to stop kicking. A moment was all that Lith needed. He released all the lightning he could muster, shocking Trant out cold. But before he could do anything else, the wooden stick hit him in the head again, making him collapse. "You'd asterisk keckhead." How dare you hurt your seniors? You deserve to die. The beating resumed, this time with no hint of mercy or holding back. Lith started coughing blood and teeth. The four had him surrounded. Lith tried multiple times rolling out of the encirclement, but he would be sent back in the middle every single time. Lots of feelings were ravaging his mind, while his body was burning with pain. The spite for his brother's betrayal, the rage of being assaulted by boys with double his age and size. But most of all, he felt helpless and afraid of death. Damn magic! What use are you if I don't have the time to concentrate? Stupid stone, I kept you hanging from my neck for months. Do something. Help me. Somebody, anybody help me. All his silent pleas went unfulfilled. While his conscience was fading, Lith started cursing himself for his weakness and helplessness. Magic, martial arts, all that careful preparation, useless. Oddly, his last thought was not for his family or revenge, but for his last opponent. If only I was as strong as a Ree. He stopped my spirit magic so easily by. His survival instinct kicked in, his mind and body acting in unison, by infusing himself with mana. And I could do that too. It's the same principle behind life and fire vision. With each breath, he started calling upon the elemental energy, but instead of wasting time giving it a form, Lith let it merge directly with his mana core, infusing himself with earth magic. His whole body started hardening, the pain getting duller and duller. Lith also infused himself with light magic, accelerating his healing and preventing himself from losing consciousness. Soon he was able to ignore the kicks, springing back up in one fluid motion. What is Earth? It's just a mix of minerals and organic matter, the same as my body. I can be immovable like a mountain. With that thought, he further hardened his head before headbutting from below the chin of the assailant in front of him. Before the remaining three could recover from the surprise and resume the encirclement, Lith raised his guard. The left arm forward for blocking, the right arm ready to strike. Orpal's friends were scared. After Lith knocked down their leader with a headbutt, the only thing on their mind was to prevent him to use magic, so they rushed forward, not giving him time to recover. The closest assailant tried to punch Lith in the face to disrupt any casting he could attempt. 60% of the human body is made of water. I can be formless like water. Lith's left arm, imbued with water magic, coiled around his opponent's right arm like a snake. The body burns calories to produce heat and energy. I can be destructive like fire. Fire magic burned through his muscles, granting Lith short bursts of explosive strength. By flexing his left arm, Lith broke the immobilized limb in 3 points: elbow, ulna, and radius, while his right fist hit the opponent on the nose, pulverizing it. The pain made the boy faint, his nose bleeding profusely. The remaining two fell into panic and tried to run away. Nerves, synapses, all the information and orders in the body are transmitted via electrical impulse. I can be fast as lightning. Lith imbued all his body with air magic, becoming fast enough to blink in front of them, punching both in the gonads at the same time. All of his opponents were down, sobbing in pain, or fainted. Lith spit a mouthful of blood while contemplating the results of his last experiment. Seems that this new magic puts too much strain on my body. Maybe I'm too young. Maybe I took too much damage. Whatever. I have all the time in the world now. I need to decide what to do with you mother of **********, Lith said while using light magic to heal his internal injuries. It may take a while, but you'll get my undivided attention. Enjoy your stay. Lith sat on the couch, his left hand on the chest, performing the healing. The right one was open in front of him, releasing 5 streams of lightning that enveloped the 5 boys like tendrils, making them scream with agony. Supreme Magus. Chapter 20 Breakups. The original plan was to kill them all, erase the evidence, and then make Orpal have an unfortunate accident. As Lith calmed down, however, he realized that it was an idiotic plan full of holes. If 5 young men disappear suddenly in a sleepy village like Lusha, it is bound to cause a commotion. Also, Orpal knows they were here. Once he discovers they are nowhere to be found, he could come too close to the truth for comfort. I don't want to give him any kind of leverage on me. There is also the possibility that these blockheads shared their plan with their siblings. Killing is the wrong answer here. Too many things can go spiraling out of control. Worst of all, if I make Orpal disappear too, the whole family would worry and grieve for him. Most certainly, I don't want to turn him into a King martyr. I want him to pay, to suffer for his whole King life. While in deep thought, Lith would release streams of lighting from his right hand, keep the spell active for a couple of seconds, then give his assailants a few moments of relief before zapping them again. They had already lost control of their bladder and bowels multiple times. When they were not writhing in pain, they were sobbing and begging for mercy. I can't let off this trash easily either. Always remember to pause between lashes. The short interval without pain fills them of false hope that it's finally over, making the next hit more painful than the previous. To punish them is not enough. I want to break them. There were too many variables. Lith was sick of running circles, so he decided to resort to a modified version of his very first plan, back on Earth. Those guys were trash too. I wonder how they reacted after my death, when the photos got leaked all over the internet with their names tagged. Lith had a cruel smile at the thought of his revenge, backstabbing them after so many years. With a final spell, Lith made the five lose consciousness and started arranging their bodies with spirit magic. I must keep both spirit and fusion magic a secret, so I need to create a stage from which I could end up a winner with just normal magic. An encirclement is too much for a 5-year-old. I'll fan them out. He put back the wooden stick in the hand of his owner, making sure it was smeared with blood. Lith was arranging the final details when he heard someone calling his name from afar. *T. I took too much time thinking. My family must have sent someone looking for me. This screws up a good part of my plan, damn it. I must play it by ear and hope they did not send Orpal, or it's going to get ugly. Lith looked through a window, spotting Alina approaching Celia's house with long and fast strides. Good, it's Mom. Rena or Dad would have been better, but I can work with this. When she got close enough, Lith responded to her call with a moan, slowly opening the door while begging for help. Alina started running with all her strength, and once inside, what she saw was bone-chilling. There was blood everywhere, teeth on the ground, and Lith was almost unrecognizable. He was losing blood from multiple injuries. His face was swollen to the point that his eyes were barely visible amidst all the black and blue. Lith was holding his left arm like it was hurt, and just by talking he could make her notice his bleeding gums and missing teeth. Mom! Thank the gods it's you. Lith's voice was distorted by the injuries into a lisp. I was so afraid they would get up before I could call for help. They tried to kill me, Mom, and I have not the strength to fight anymore. Alina quickly embraced him, feeling him yelp and shivering from the pain caused by even such a gentle touch. My baby, my poor baby, who did this to you? The two of them started to cry at the same time. Alina because she was scared to death. Lith because while in his mother's embrace, he could finally allow himself to vent all his rage and fears. Orpal. It's all Orpal's fault. These are all his friends. They even told me their plan when they thought I was about to die. Alina was shocked by those words, refusing to believe such a terrible thing. But those five really were Orpal's closest friends. One of them, Rizzle, was even holding his grandfather's wooden stick, and it was stained with blood. Alina looked at Lith's head, easily spotting the bruises and cuts shaped after the cane. Why would they assault you otherwise? And how could they possibly know that today Celia was out of town? Alina thought out loud. Among the sobbing and crying, Lith was inwardly smiling. Feeding her facts was a last resort. It would have a much deeper impact if she put the pieces together by herself. Can't you heal yourself, even a little bit? Alina's voice was full of worry. Her son's condition seemed dire. Lith was expecting this question. Now that I had the time to recover, I could. But I won't. Why? That answer made no sense to her. Alina started worrying his injuries were affecting his mind. Because when you and Dad decide what to do with Orpal, I wanted to take a good look of what he did to me. Lith screamed, coughing a mouthful of blood from a wound he had reopened on purpose. Orpal has always hated me. Always will. No matter if I help you all with chores or your health. He does not care how much game I bring to the table or money to our house. Nothing is ever enough for him. Lith kept screaming and sobbing. Am I such an awful son, such a terrible brother to deserve this? Lith hugged her with all of his strength, bawling his eyes out. Alina was at loss for words, but only for a moment. She held her son tightly, raising him up from the ground and carrying him back home. Then she brought the whole family to Celia's house to let them witness the scene with their own eyes. The matter was too serious. She could not hide it from her children. When Orpal saw Lith, he became pale as a ghost. Alina refused to call him by his name, and if glares could kill, he was certain that she would make him leave the fields feet first. What the heck went wrong? Those morons knew the plan. They had only to rough him up, teach him respect and humility, but most importantly to force him to shut his *king mouth up. Now, my stupid parents will never let me hear the end of it. And when he saw all the blood on the floor with his friends still there and out cold, he felt his life falling apart. As soon as Alina let him do it, Raz embraced Lith before checking his conditions. After that, he looked around the room, easily recognizing the 5 culprits. Rena, go call their parents. Take Tista with you. I don't want her to hear what I am about to say. Raz was even paler than Orpal, clenching his fists so hard that they started to bleed. Alina had whispered to him only 3 words after coming back with Lith. Orpal did it. In the beginning, he had refused to believe that one of his beloved children could do something like that, but the truth appeared so horrifyingly simple to his eyes. No one outside of the family knew that Lith worked for Celia. No one else could possibly know that exactly on that day and time Lith would be left alone in Celia's house. But the most painful and irrefutable truth was that no one but Orpal could possibly resent Lith so much. He barely knew anyone outside of his family and their closest friends. Lith had always been working so hard to help all of them, especially Tista, that he never had the time to make friends or enemies. Raz felt those thoughts ripping his heart out of his chest, but he had to know. Did you do it? Raz looked Orpal straight in the eyes. A terrible silence fell in the room, revealing the truth that Raz was trying so hard to deny, looking for a possible alternative explanation. But there wasn't any. How could you possibly do this to your brother? Tears were streaming from his eyes. Dad, I swear it's not like you think. I can explain. Orpal's mind was desperately trying to find a plausible excuse. Is there anything to explain? Raz roared out of anger. Aren't those your friends? Yes, but it wasn't you telling them what to do. It wasn't you planning how, when, and where to ambush Lith, causing him to be almost beaten to the death. In the God's name, how could you possibly explain all that? Because that wasn't the plan. They didn't listen to me, just like you. You never listen to what I say. You never let me have my way, always siding with Leech and the cripple. You were never on my side. Never. They got carried away. Is that your explanation? Raz didn't know if to laugh or cry. Do you mean that ambushing and beating your brother, my son, is perfectly fine as long they do it with moderation? He raised his fist, tempted to give Orpal a taste of his own medicine, but Alina stopped him. Too much blood has already been shed today. Don't do it. You'd only harm yourself. He is beyond saving. Alina was crying too, but her face and tone were stone cold. She had already made up her mind. Raz was too broken to stand anymore. He needed to sit down on a chair, weeping. You are right, my love. I have lost count of the times I've tried to make him understand that respect is something that you must give before receiving it yourself. That we were his parents, not his friends. We are supposed to help our children understand their mistakes, not enabling them. The gods know if I haven't tried to teach him that his siblings were not his servants, that a man's authority lies in the responsibilities he shoulders, not how strong he is. I know I have not been a perfect father, but I did the best that I could. I don't know what to do with him anymore, Alina. Raz wiped his own tears, looking for his wife's support. I agree. Even now, he doesn't show any remorse. He never loved his brother, stealing his food and calling him names even before Lith was able to walk. He is clearly unable to understand the enormity of what he did. I believe that if we allow this to continue, he will do it again. If not to Lith, to Tista. And I'm not going to let him doing more harm to our family. She held Raz's hand tight, searching for the strength she needed. I think we should disown him. strip him of his name, and report him together with his accomplices for attempted murder to the village militia. Thanks, my love. Raz had no more tears to cry, his resolve steeled like his voice. I don't think I had in me the strength to say it.